Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, Robert Meyer Burnett. I invite you to watch and listen to the Designing Hollywood podcast, brought to you by Martika Ibarra and the great, legendary Hollywood costume designer, Marilyn Vance. I am afforded the wonderful opportunity of co-hosting the show. If you are interested in the magic of Hollywood, the design of Hollywood, the clothes of Hollywood, watch the Designing Hollywood podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts from, or find the video version on the John Campea YouTube channel. That's right, the Designing Hollywood podcast. Why would you ever want to miss it, especially if you love the movies?
There's a company called Hot Toys, and they make these insanely realistic, renderings of characters. They do them for all the Marvel characters or whatever, and they look so much like you. It's disturbing, actually. Like, scary. They look so much like you, but they're tiny. They're like 18 inches or something like that. They actually that's what's crazy about that company is they hand make the, like they carve the mold. The mold of, thank you, of the.
That's crazy.
It's wild.
Robservations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, yada, 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 whatever you want to call me. That's okay. It's a new year. And it's time for the first Midnight Musings of 2024. And I assure you, tonight is going to be a banger. We're going to talk about your favorite subject, Star Wars movies starring REY Skywalker. And we have a lot to say about it. And I'll tell you, it's the first show we've done of the year, and I want to bring her on. You know her, you love her. I call her You can call her RM. You can call her whatever you want. And she's here now with us. What's up? What's up?
Hello, Robert. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. What is happening?
Just so excited to do musings this new year, and enjoying just everything. Robert, I'm just so excited about For All Mankind.
Oh my
I'm
God.
excited about
How great was
so
that
many-
episode?
Oh my goodness. It was just good enough to eat. You could eat it with a spoon, Robert. There are so many great things. One thing I can say, it has given me a greater appreciation for my Big Mac meal when I always anticipate ordering it and getting to eat it, because he didn't even get a chance to grab a fry.
He didn't get a chance. Well, I guess we're spoiling it, but that was the funny thing about For All Mankind. As much as I love the show, it is bloodthirsty. It's a bloodthirsty show. I've never actually gone back and done this, but I wonder how many people they've killed over the course of the program. But all I can say is this. That's all I can say. And if you know the show, if you love the show, and where I got the For All Mankind title font, I don't know what to say. I have no idea. Things just show up.
It's so cool, Robert. It's so cool.
Can I flex? I've done this before. I did this on another show, but I got to flex to you.
Yes.
I got to show you something really cool.
Okay.
Are you ready? So people know it's genuine. You can see there's paint and stuff on the back of it. This is the dedication plaque of the USS Enterprise G from Picard Season 3. Now, I would imagine this is probably a duplicate. I can't say whether it's screen used or not, but maybe it was. who do I things just show up. I don't know where they come from. They just show up.
You are so lucky. You know who would love that would be Danielle on Happy Valley, because she wants her grandbabies to be Star Trek fans, Robert.
Yes, she does. And although I still like to think of For All Mankind as the precursor to Star Trek, even though Star Trek exists in my head canon in the multiverse or something like that. For All Mankind. It's such a great show. You know, what's funny is to me, people don't understand that it is a melodrama. You know, that people are like, well, people are always like, I prefer hard science fiction. I mean, it's really about people, and it's really emotional, and you get caught up in the characters. But I mean, I have to say, this season, pitting Danielle and Ed against one another, 30 years of friendship brewing over. I mean, I have to say, when Danielle says, fuck you, Ed, it goes down in history. I mean, Chris, the actress Chris who plays Danielle, that fuck you, in terms of the deployment of the word fuck, was one of the greatest in cinema history. Chris Marshall I love her. I love her character. I don't know if she's going to be on season, because we would have gone from the 70s. I mean, we've gone from the 70s to the 80s to the 90s. This season's in the early 2000s. I mean, I don't know where she'd be, an old lady. Like, she'd be like in her 70s in the next season. But and Ed already's in his. I don't know why Ed's still on Mars, and also what's really interesting, as you will see, even though it's not a precursor to The Expanse, it could be. Because the only hint, look at that. Look, what is that?
This is the Kickstarter comic book for The Expanse, made by Boom Studios, and it tells. They have a bunch of stuff out, but in this one, what does it actually tell? Picking up after the final season of the acclaimed and beloved The Expanse show, and filling in the missing years between The Expanse, Babylon's Ashes, and The Expanse, Persepolis Rising, the hidden stories of your favorite Expanse characters are revealed for the first time, Robert.
Dun, dun, dun.
The Kickstarter came out just in December of 2023, so this is what it looks like.
As Darth Plato was saying in the chat just now, I made Quado jokes about The Expanse. I mean, about For All Mankind. What I find really, really interesting about this whole season is it really has been about a free Mars. About how is Mars going to get. You can see that Dev wants to die on Mars. Ed has no interest in leaving Mars, and I love the fact that they've turned this thing into a caper. Like this whole, and the caper's great. The caper's so great. And the idea is, if they pull it off, they have the resources. They have more resources than are on planet Earth. So if they pull off what they're going to try and do, Mars becomes the most important place in terms of natural resources. I mean, they could write their own ticket, because they can start manufacturing and all kinds of things, launch to the outer solar system. I mean, it's a real game changer. I will say this: we don't know if we get a renewal yet. I mean, I hope they announce it. Here's the thing: on next Thursday, I'm going to a screening event where they're showing the last episode, and all the cast is going to be there, and Ron Moore is going to be there. Everybody's going to be there.
Oh
yeah.
My God, that's so cool.
Yeah, so we're going to that screening. It's in Burbank, I think, and Frosty Collider's putting it on. And wow. It's my hope that they'll announce the 5th season there, because this season has been a banger. I mean, it's so funny, because people are like, well, this is starting slow, and I don't really like the story. And I'm like, come on, as it's progressed, it's always, the writers know. Now I have to ask, I don't remember. Because I saw it with Bill Hunt, I watched it all at once. Did this episode, the 9th episode, did it open with a flashback?
No, I don't think so. I think
a flashback to 2 years ago.
No, I don't think so.
Then forget I said anything. Okay, never mind.
I don't think so. I think it opens with poor Sam. As I said, she's very clever girl.
Oh, right,
She
right. Yeah,
used
yeah.
to, she
Yeah.
used the old "I'm going to put water in your engine" technique. Talking about old school, I wouldn't be surprised if she had some bananas in her bag.
Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna fall for the banana on the tailpipe.
The writers, they know, they circle back to something that I had totally forgotten about from previous, and I was like, oh, and it literally, I can't say what it is. It's a well-trodden trope of drama. And it's a certain term, and if I use it, you might remember. But I was like, I totally forgot about it, and it just ratcheted up the tension. Like I was like, oh my god! I mean, it's a little thing, but when you realize because it's space, and yeah, I love the show so much. But once again, justice for Sergey. Justice for Sergey. It's very sad. Very sad.
I think also what's interesting is that there is no one group that feels as if they have complete control. We're up to the end of episode 9, and I'm not confident that any one group has an advantage. And I love that I can't quite place who I feel has any kind of advantage. It's nice to not feel that one group is more powerful than another. It's not like that at all. It's amazing.
Well, they're subverting tropes. You think they're going to do something, but the funny thing about this, what I love about this show so much is, first of all, this ties in with what I want to talk about. This show has done diversity, like it's delved into issues of race. It's gone into LGBTQ issues, but
Sex in space.
It's sex in space, all kinds of things, but it does it in an organic way, and it's really well written. So it's not, no one's banging anyone's head. It's like The Expanse. What I loved about the way they cast The Expanse is there was so many multi-ethnic people, biracial people, and that's the way it would be. Because people, as we get more open, you're going to see a lot of people intermixing. Because once we move out into the stars, the genetic makeup from the entire planet is going to be what's important. I mean, these weird racial divisions that we have, because as we become a spacefaring race, the strongest genetic traits are going to survive in space. And as we move out in the cosmos, which is kind of, if you think about it, the way evolution works. So when we move into a different environment in space, evolution will change. And I really think that what's so great about For All Mankind is, of all the TV shows, the way it does diversity and inclusion, I think, is so beautifully done. And it's very germane to the plot of the show. And you know who else is germane to the plot of, I think, any show? Any show is made better with the presence of our fellow compatriot coming to us all the way from Harrisburg. And again, the only reason I know where he is because of Dawn of the Dead, because that city that he lives in was mentioned, name-checked in Dawn of the Dead, because someone says, do you know where you are? I know exactly where we are. They're in a helicopter. And the character says Harrisburg. And he says, passed it about an hour ago. So please welcome Lael Rockwell to the show.
Man, how you doing? Happy New Year to everybody. What's going on?
Happy New Year to you. Okay, now I haven't talked about this with anybody because I haven't seen Anthony. I was on a show. We were waiting for a Hot Toys drop. Was there going to be one? I mean, in Hong Kong, they only had like 12 hours before the New Year came. And we were all speculating on what happened, and they did drop something. And Iron Man Mark II, that figure, dude, I have to tell you, it's been a long time since I've had a physiological, if you know what I'm saying, reaction. I mean, that figure's bonerific. I'm just saying. I mean, and that figure's got some cheeks on it. You know what I'm saying? So, how did you feel about Hot Toys New Year's Eve drop?
Well, I mean, now, first of all, can you hear me?
Yeah, you sound
Yes.
great.
I sound all right? Because it's weird because I'm coming through the computer. It's weird. I don't know how this thing works. It's crazy. Especially with this program.
You
It's
sound
weird.
really good.
But, okay, good. Here's the thing, like, because there were a lot of there were some mixed emotions throughout the community when it came to it. Because,
I know.
A lot of people were, again, when we get the sentiment of a 2.0, you know what I mean? When people are talking about 2.0 figures.
Well, this is actually like a 3.0 or 4.0.
Yeah. And if it's an Iron Man figure, of course, there's going to be a discussion. You know what I mean? You're talking to somebody who never had the Mark II. You know what I mean? I never had it.
I had the original plastic one.
See,
I sold it to my friend Dave.
See, I never had the original, so the 2.0 drop, it looked pretty good to me, man. And I was just like, look, I put this display together. I've created this whole armor war section. You know what I mean? Like, where I have pretty much every Iron Man figure that I have in my display. I didn't realize how many I had, and so I put them all together. And I was like, damn, I didn't realize I had that many Iron Man 1/6 scale figures. But that 2.0, that Mark II 2.0 would definitely go good. It would definitely go well in a display. So I was happy about it. I mean, I was pretty good about the display. I mean, it could have gave us something more. I mean, it could have, but I mean, come on, that's their bread and butter. So I didn't have a problem with it.
No, I just think it's a great looking figure. The head sculpt is great.
It looks good. The head sculpt, especially with the new PERS rolling eye technology that they're giving pretty much every figure now, look pretty good, man. I
thought it looked good.
I like it. So yeah.
Okay, now that you're here, I want to talk some Star Wars. Again, we had an explosion of anger and all but I just want to say that is not where I'm coming from. Not where I'm coming from with this. But so I did want to give people, in case, look, let me just read this article quickly from Variety. Zach Sharf wrote this. It was published on January 2nd at 2 in the afternoon. Daisy Ridley's new Star Wars director says, and you've all heard it, but I'm going to say it again, it's about time we had a female filmmaker come forward to shape the galaxy far, far away. There's been many female filmmakers that have worked in Star Wars, including the great Marsha Lucas, the Academy Award-winning Marsha Lucas, who edited the first Star Wars film, along with a few other people like Richard Chew and Paul Hirsch. But and then there's been female directors on, of course, The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, and so we had female. But I get it. There hasn't been a feature film directed by a woman, and that's okay. Daisy Ridley is coming back to the big screen in a new Star Wars movie directed by Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy. She worked on Ms. Marvel and written by Stephen Knight. Peaky Blinders. Now that's interesting. I loved Peaky Blinders, and Stephen Knight is a really interesting writer. So I'm like, that piques my interest. The film makes Obaid-Chinoy the first woman and first person of color to direct a Star Wars feature film. Previous film directors in the franchise include the original creator George Lucas, Irvin Kershner, J.J. Abrams, Rian Johnson. I'm very thrilled about the project because I feel what we're about to create is something very special. Obaid-Chinoy recently told CNN, we're in 2024 now, and it's about time that we had a woman come forward to shape the story in a galaxy far, far away. And we're 15 years out from the rise of Skywalker. That's interesting. So we're post-war, post-First Order, and the Jedi are in disarray, Kennedy confirmed. Well, which Jedi are those? But okay. There's a lot of discussion around who are the Jedi, what are they doing, what is the state of the galaxy. She's attempting to rebuild the Jedi Order based on the books, based on what she promised Luke, so that's where we're going. Now, when asked if Mark Hamill's Luke Skywalker could be involved in the film via flashbacks or as a Force ghost like he was in The Rise of Skywalker, Kennedy answered, I don't know if we'll spend a lot of time in flashbacks or on Force ghosts or anything like that, but certainly the spirit of what he represents to her is going to be significant. So that's interesting. In an interview with Variety at Star Wars Celebration, Kennedy said Ridley was out of her mind, excited to return to the franchise. Then, of course, a lot of people have been digging up Charmin Obaid Chinoy has been an activist. She's Pakistani. She's looked into, in Pakistan, in Pakistan, they still have honor killings there. They still have women who aren't allowed to become educated. So when she was talking in her role as an activist, she was speaking because she's fighting for women's rights in a predominantly Muslim area of the world.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people were triggered by that. I was not, because I think you need to look into what she was saying and why she was saying what she was saying. So I think that it's unfair. I think her treatment has been unfair, because the activism that she was trying to do and that she was trying to bring forward, and the documentary, she won an Academy Award for her documentary short subject. So I think she's somebody that is definitely to be admired for her work and what she's tried to do. She's never tackled anything like this before, and I think that we've seen. That's the thing that gives me pause. I'm like, what credentials does she have to make a Star Wars film? So that, I think that's definitely a valid criticism. But now I would ask the two of you first, before I jump into what I want to talk about. What did you guys think of these things that have been going on this week, and how do you feel about her stepping in to direct the film?
How do I feel about it? I think that anybody can do a good job regardless of what gender they are. So hopefully she can do a good job. And I think it's about time that Rey actually has a relationship with Finn that we've been wanting to see. Let's
see some cheeks. Let's see some Jedi fucking.
Let's see Rey have an intimate relationship with him, because we all were expecting it. And, they look good together. They have chemistry on screen. They even had a Christmas, maybe it was like a little Christmas special where Rey is actually teaching him the Force. That was the last time that I saw them do anything with her character. And she's showing him how to be a Jedi. So I don't think they would just put that in there off the cuff, or if it didn't mean anything. If it's 15 years later, I want to see them fighting side by side, if you know what I mean.
I think, yeah. Yeah. What about you, Lael? You're a big Rey fan. This should be like,
yeah, I am.
Yeah.
Unapologetically.
Yeah.
Unapologetically. I am. And that's because I see the potential in the story itself. You can't, and the reason why I say this is because, you can't fault the actor for how a story's been written and the direction that it's been taken. You can't fault the actor for that. But you can see the potential to take a character a certain way if given the opportunity to really explore it in such a way that, is, I think the character can be redeemed if it's written the right way, if it's placed in the hands of someone. And here's the thing, bro, like, what director do we know lately? Any director who's actually, look, Kirshner, when he basically directed Empire Strikes Back, he had no experience with what was going on in Lucas's head at that time, but he was a director, and he came in and he did a bang up job and gave us one of the most historically one of the greatest films, of all times with Empire. He gave us that. You know what I mean? So my thing is, bro, like, anybody has and can, put it this way, bro. Comments that were made. And in any of the comments that she basically made, again, like I said, you have to really do your research on, because, bro, had this been another film outside of the Star Wars universe, had this been something else that she directed that had nothing to do with the franchise, excuse me, that had absolutely nothing to do with the franchise or the IP, there probably wouldn't have been much emphasis on what she said. There wouldn't have been that much surrounding it, because, again, it's not dealing with the IP. We're already dealing with an IP that is divisive, that's divided. There's a lot of divisiveness in this particular IP. So, again, regardless, bro, like, it's to be expected. That's just the way it is. It's definitely to be expected. And like you said, you have to do the research to really understand where she was coming from and what directly she was talking about. Because when they had that conversation, and even during the live setting, there was no mention of her talking anything directly about Star Wars at that time.
No, she wasn't. She wasn't at all. It was back. It was from 8 years ago.
Exactly. It had nothing to do with Star Wars. That was, but see, people don't do the research, so they're already triggered, and they want to do they want to go way back, but never mention when it was dated, what the content behind it was, what the narrative was at that point. So all of a sudden, there's a trigger. You know what I mean? So that's just basically, and here's the thing, bro. I come to expect it. Now look at this on two different. I look at this two different ways, bro. Number one, we already know that Disney, and they're like, and I was talking to a friend of mine about this, like, yo, they're you know, how do I want to say, their PR, bro, it's like they don't really know how to control. They don't have control over what people say, and it's like you're not really supposed to, but at the same time, it's just like, okay, if you know there's a sensitive subject, let your work speak for it. You know what I mean? Your work speaks for whatever you're trying to basically accomplish and where you're trying to go. That's the thing. I wouldn't even speak on it. I wouldn't have like, look, if you want to see what this movie's about, wait and see. Wait until it's closer to the date, or once we go into production. Once we release the film, you'll know exactly what's out there. Once we start the promotion, you'll know exactly where we're going. But right now, I can't really give too much information away, but we just know that we have something special. That's all you would really need to basically say. But the thing is, it's like we live in a space where, again, with this IP, it's going to be sensitive. It's always going to be a sensitive situation. And I come to expect that. So anytime there's a conversation about Star Wars, bro, it's always going to be met with a level of controversy, no matter what it is.
Right.
And I come to really expect that. So it really didn't surprise me that someone would go to this length, or anybody would dig up this information, but not really, and add their own narrative to it. Like, seriously, that it just surprises me. It doesn't surprise me that people would do that, because this is the state of the world that we live in. We live in like cancel culture goes two totally different ways, bro. It does. It's handled from two totally different standpoints. It's like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't type of a situation. I come to realize that now. And again, like, bro, I've been literally attacked for just stating the simple fact that I have no problem with Rey's character.
Right.
Because I see the potential. Now, I do have a problem with the misuse of John Boyega's Finn, because I think that was a tragedy.
Oh, he was done dirty.
Shouldn't have done that. He was done dirty, bro. But if there can be redemption, if he is willing to come back and they can do a better story, then I would be all in for it. You know, the thing is, bro, I'm all in for more Star Wars content. I am a Star Wars fan, unapologetically. And you can basically say that I'm a shill if you want. I don't give two shits, because I love the IP I've always had.
Right.
And I'm willing to give it a chance. But I'm also willing to point out if there are certain things that I don't like. Now, I wasn't really a fan at all of, you know, the Rise or the Last Jedi or the Rise of Skywalker. I wasn't a fan. I'll honestly say that. Force Awakens, I saw the potential. But everything
that
else,
was, yeah. I agree with you. I think the Rise of Skywalker, you know, I don't know J.J. Abrams as a person. I'm sure he's a delightful man, and he did do something that he will forever have my undying gratitude for, and that is he personally took it upon himself to pay for the upgrade and restoration of one of my favorite horror films of all time, Don Coscarelli's 1979 Phantasm, with the silver ball, and that's why there's Captain Phasma in the sequel trilogy.
In the sequel trilogy,
yeah, and that's why she's wearing chrome armor. And
Yeah.
I my friend Dieter Bastian, Phantasm was released in 4K in Germany. It hasn't come out in 4K here, so he got me that. So kudos to J.J. Abrams. That said, you know, and this is what I want. This is the topic I wanted to bring up tonight. There has been a lot of talk of female heroes, you know, the female heroes replacing male characters, and there's been a lot of talk for this. And I always bring up the fact that one of the great female characters in science fiction is Ripley from the Alien franchise. But I always look at Aliens, the sequel, as now this is going to be it shouldn't be controversial to talk about this, but I'm going to talk about it anyway.
Yeah.
So Star Wars is based on, it has a lot of it takes a lot of inspiration from Kurosawa's samurai films, not just The Hidden Fortress, but Seven Samurai and Throne of Blood and Yojimbo and Sanjuro and all of those. Obviously, the Jedi take a lot from that, and take a lot of the hero's journey that Joseph Campbell delved into, and all of Joseph Campbell's works about where the hero's journey comes from in terms of storytelling. Now, here's the thing. The inspirations for all of this are male. The characters are male because in Japanese feudal Japan, women, and in human history, men and women were very different because women had to bear children and men were the hunter-gatherers. So men were protective of women because only depending how far back you go, only like 10% of children even survived.
Yep.
So, and a lot of the stories that were told, whether it was the Odyssey and the Iliad, you want to go back to Gilgamesh, Beowulf, all these classic tales of the last 2,000 years, they were all male stories. Now, nowadays, one of the things I liked about Aliens, for instance, is if you just take a woman and put her in the place of a male character, like Rey being Luke Skywalker of the new trilogy, what I've been missing from female characters is their feminine nature. Now, in Aliens, if people remember, we find out that Ripley was a mother and that she was trying to get home for her daughter's 11th birthday. But because of the events in Alien, she was able to escape in the Narcissus, the shuttle from the Nostromo shuttle Narcissus, and she drifted in hypersleep for 57 years.
For 57 years.
And her daughter, Amy, and she says in the movie, especially the extended version, you find out more about it, that her daughter, Amy, lived and died. I think she was 57 when she died. And Ripley never was able never got a chance. So the fact that she was a mother and the fact that she had given birth, when she comes across Newt on LV-426 at Hadley's Hope, the colony that they go to in the movie, I've seen it too many times, clearly. Yeah, so here's this proxy daughter of hers, and literally she's up against a different kind of a mother in the Alien Queen, but who's also trying to protect her offspring. But the strength that Ripley has in that movie comes from a feminine power that only women possess, which is the ability to give birth, gestate life and give birth. Now, here's the funny thing. In Avengers Age of Ultron, I think it's Age of Ultron, you find out that Black Widow, because of her program, in the Black Widow program, was sterilized. And she's not able to have children. And she thinks that makes her half a woman. It's so much a part of her identity, and she's able to bond with Banner over that. And she's like, "Look, I'm a monster. I've been, So the feminine, when it comes to female characters in science fiction and fantasy, is always a good thing. And what I'm curious about, what I would really like to see, especially because I don't think anyone's dealt with this, and if somebody's dealt with it in a novel, please tell me. We see female Jedi. They talk about, now I would imagine, and they've never dealt with this directly, but if a female Jedi gets a Force user, I would imagine that it would be the most desirable thing to have a child if you're a Force user, because the female Jedi could turn their Force training inward. Imagine what the offspring of a Jedi who's a Force user could be like, utilizing the power of the Force as you're carrying a child to term. And they've talked about there's a lineage with the midi-chlorians or whatever, but the way it's done, it's just like they've transposed. There's nothing about the feminine in the Jedi. And I wonder, wouldn't it be interesting to delve in, because we see, like, in all of the big science fiction, like in Dune, for instance, the Bene Gesserit sisterhood are playing with bloodlines, and they, who really control the universe in the Dune universe, they use the power of the feminine is where their power is derived from. You know, they're manipulating bloodlines, and like Lady Jessica is able to choose whether she's going to have a son or a daughter. You know, she has that power, and that's what makes them fucking scary. You can't go up against the Bene Gesserit, and I would love to see more of the feminine incorporated into these fantasy characters, because the power that women have is different than the power that men have. I'm not saying it's better, but it's different. You know,
more of a nurturing.
Yes, and what if exactly? So my question to you is, because people are both of you, is, am I crazy to want to see more emphasis on the power inherent in the feminine in our fantasy characters?
No, you're not. And here's what I explain really quick. Because I'll take it a little bit further back, because we know that in the novels, and even with Luke, when he was basically establishing his own Jedi Order, he was not against the the sentiment of love and also marriage amongst the Jedi, amongst his order. As long as if it was within the Jedi Order, he wasn't against relationships at all. He wasn't. You know what I mean? In the novels, he was not. You know what I mean? He basically was all for it. You know what I mean? Was no problems whatsoever. I think the simple fact that if we're seeing it, it's kind of crazy, because out of all 3 sequel films, like, what was the narrative of what we got? And I'll just take this further back. The narrative that we actually got with, like, even like the OT trilogy, it was a sentiment of love. It was love.
Right.
It was the love between, Han and Leia. It was the love, between, Luke and his father. I think that aspect in the sequel trilogies was missing. Even with the prequels, it was the sentiment of love. It was the love between both, Padme and Anakin. The love between Obi-Wan as more so a father figure over, Anakin at that particular point. You know what I mean? It was the sentiment of love, relationship, but at the same time, vulnerability. That level of vulnerability was shown in these particular films, which made not one person better than the other, because they all had their level of vulnerability. You strip those aspects away from the sequel trilogy because it focused on a character. Now, good, as much as I like Rey's character, there wasn't enough vulnerability there for me. And the reason why I say that is because, again, we saw we saw the development of what could have been a relationship between her and Finn in the first film. You know what I mean? Because, again, we saw the simple fact that, Finn, regardless of how they want to downplay it, he loved Rey. He literally loved her. He loved her. He fell for her. He did everything that he could in all 3 fucking films for this woman only to be friend zone. You know what I mean? And then you just all of a sudden develop this relationship between her and Ben Solo, who they really didn't have. The only connection that they had was through the Force, but didn't really spend that much time. And I wondered why they diverted that. And I didn't really understand that. But again, I just felt as though the vulnerability aspect, and like you said, that aspect of a nurturing person, or what it could have been, if in fact we could have solved that entanglement, that relationship between 2 individuals that could establish something through the, even before, even outside of the Force itself. But just that journey was missing. It just wasn't there. Like we couldn't get that. So but what you're saying is the feminine aspect, you can still be strong, but maintain that feminine value.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that
You can,
I'm tired.
And I'm gonna give you an example really, really quick. And this is something that, all right, I'll give you one really, really quick example. And this is something outside of even the Star Wars IP. Okay. We just got probably one of the best seasons of What If, right? So did you watch any What If?
I have not watched. I've only watched the first episode. I haven't watched the rest of it.
Okay. I don't want to give too much away. And I wish you would have watched it, because you have to watch the final episode
Mhm.
to know exactly what I'm talking about. Did you watch What If? See,
Yes.
okay. So here's my point. It's just,
Are
this
you
is crazy.
referring to the new character they created for the show?
Well, that one, and also Captain Carter, but then also Stephen Strange. I'm going a certain place with this, because you had to watch it to really understand what I'm talking about, and you haven't seen it. I don't want to give it away, because I know you would have to watch it to understand, but I wanted to use that because how can it? Because I was going somewhere with this, but I can't. All right, let's go back to the first season. Did you watch the first season at all?
Oh yeah. Sure.
Mhm.
All right. So you knew how powerful Stephen Strange was, right?
Yes.
Now, that version of Stephen Strange, that version of Doctor Strange was powerful, right? Which that is carried over into this next season. When you get to the
Okay.
final episodes, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But this particular season here, it has everything to do with, and I think it's centered around Captain Carter, bro. It is. That's the way they've
Cool.
done this.
It's cool.
It's centered around her. It's her journey. Now, when you get to the end of this last season, this last episode, they tie it ever so well into Loki. They do.
Oh.
They do. At the very last scene of this episode, they tie it in to Loki. And all I want you to do is keep in the back of your mind the tree of Idrisil. Keep that in the mind. Keep that in the back of your mind.
All right.
Because when you see it, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. You'll be like, okay, this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to weave these things in. But my point about this was, you had a character that was powerful in her own right. She was dealing with a lot of loss. She was dealing with her own transgression, because again, it was a character who her whole sole purpose was to see Steve one more time, to be with Steve. And in any realm, she can't. Like, no matter what happens, she can never be with that character. It never ends well. So there's a level of vulnerability there, because again, she could never establish a family. She could never do certain things, but yet she's going through a certain journey. So there's a level of vulnerability there. You got a chance to basically see that. This new character is great, because I love the narrative that they actually took. And I want to give too much away, but my thing is, there were a lot of people hating on it because they were like, well, you're making these female characters too OP, too powerful, too this, that, and the third. But no one said anything about Stephen Strange, bro. That motherfucker was OP. Like, literally OP. I'm like, I don't know how the hell, bro. He was like in this last season, he was Thanos level. Literally.
Okay. All right.
And
Wow.
I'll just put it there. But my point of it is the simple fact that there was a level of vulnerability. If you followed this character, you had a chance to see that there were certain decisions that she made that could have ruined things, but at the same time, she carried her own transgressions. But there was still it was still a feminine value there. And you're right. I do think that is what's missing. That is what has been missing in these films, and we need to see that. Like Mmmm's been saying, we need to see more relationships, because when there's relationships, when we see that bond between individuals, it creates more of a risk. Because if you lose that person, you stand to lose everything.
Sure.
And
Now-
you see that because you're basically fighting for something. And the thing is, if we think about it, what was REY really fighting for? She was fighting to find out about who she was and her family, but we just saw a power level that was just like, okay, unreally explained, and then they just threw in a narrative with this last film. But if she
which
really had
was
something to fight on-
was just ridiculous and
ridiculous.
unearned.
Exactly. But if she had something to fight for, and if basically a relationship was, if, even like I said, the feeling that she could lose someone like a Finn, we saw their journey through all three films, or we saw what was supposed to be
Well, then they
established.
tried to give Finn to Rose Tico.
Yeah, and that's what
which
didn't
was
make
such a
sense.
weird.
And that's what I'm saying, bro. It was a weird. What they did with that made absolutely no fucking.
No, it will. Okay, now let me ask you,
Yeah,
RM.
Yes.
First of all, I wanted to ask you your thoughts on. You know, there's a long legacy of female action characters that we've seen. I mean, Lara Croft is a riff on Indiana Jones, but we've got like La Femme Nikita or just Nikita from Luc Besson's movie that later they did multiple TV shows with her. We've seen in Asian fantasy, there have been many female characters that kick ass. Mm-hmm. But it seems like here in the West, there's this weird effort to try and, I mean, I understand you want to appeal, especially Disney wants to appeal to their core audience, which is princesses. I get that. I mean, it makes sense to me. But how do you feel about feminine fantasy characters that are heroic?
I think they can be heroic, but they do need to have some kind of romance as well. There must be romance, and it can be romance where perhaps not the way that romance was introduced between Rey and Finn. You know, the romance has to progress the story, right? Mm-hmm. Because one thing that you notice with Rey and Finn is that part of their lives never progresses. It feels like something's missing, right? Why doesn't the story click right? Why doesn't it feel like they were able to go on with their journey? It's because they didn't consummate their relationship. And whether that meant that they kissed each other or slept together or whatever it is, it never happened. And so that part of the story couldn't advance. She would be a much more dynamic character if she had some kind of relationship with him. Even if it didn't work out, there was some kind of intimacy there. So it needs to come to a fruition. You know, Robert, you had that article about the girl who claimed to be a romantic writer, the same chick who went ahead and put on those negative reviews of other writers. And if you really think about it, when you read other people's stories, maybe you like them and maybe you love them, but you're supposed to get inspiration from other people's work, not dogging them just because you don't care for their what they're writing. And it's maybe the most unromantic thing you could think that a romance writer would do. But it does give you an indication of the frame of mind that some romantic writers are looking from. Romance may not be their priority, but love needs to be the priority in a romance story. In order for there to be romance, there has to be that love interest. And to be honest with you, I don't believe that feminine characters don't want to have love. I think they want love, and there are obstacles in the way, and the obstacles, whether it's trying to save the world or the galaxy, whatever it is, they still want to be with somebody. You know, my number one fantasy person is Barbarella, because she starts off where she's in the galaxy and she wants to be with somebody and share intimacy with someone.
Yeah, and with Pygar the Angel. Yeah.
So do the men that she encounters, so do the angels, even the queen. I think it's so important that in the story, it's telling you can explore the galaxy, but romance is needed and love is needed. And if we're going to go ahead and write stories about relationships between men and women, they can't be throwaway stories. People want to see stories that have some value to them and mean something. I was watching Ferrari the other day, and even in that story, we had this famous race car driver who unfortunately has this kiss of death between he and his girlfriend. She left Tyrone Power for this race car driver. And it's like, if that isn't romantic, if that isn't one of the most romantic things, Tyrone Power left Rita Hayworth for her, and she left Tyrone Power for this race car driver. There's a scene in the movie, gentlemen, where the race car driver is completely nude. He's nude, and he's hopping into bed with this woman. He can't wait to be with her. And I thought to myself, it's a very interesting way to put a scene of romance. She can't wait to be with this man. This man is means the world to her. So losing him was devastating, but it adds to this story. It's a tragedy, but we needed to see them together and making love and having that intimate moment. There are so many times where we're seeing these intimate moments. They can be expressed many different ways, but they help a story to progress forward. Why didn't Rey mature in this entire trilogy? She never got together with Finn, and he wanted to be with her. He loves her. I know everybody has different opinions about it, but I'm convinced. I mean, John Boyega is kind of romantic even when he plays a stormtrooper. How many romantic stormtroopers have you guys seen? Well, you know what? John Boyega did it.
Well,
he
okay.
made stormtroopers romantic because he fell in love with her. He saw her. And I think that if a character can fall in love with any woman like that, regardless of what her mission is, it does elevate that story. It gives us the fantasy portion of what's going on. Then it makes her a little bit stronger to fight things. She has support. She has more fulfillment in her life. It just makes her stronger in a sense.
But here's the thing. I mean, in terms of a Star Wars movie, I don't know if necessarily there is time, for romance. Like, I agree with you. I guess I'm more interested from, like, we live in this weird. Have you guys seen the new Dave Chappelle comedy special?
Yes.
Sure did.
What'd you guys think?
I loved it.
I loved it, bro.
I loved it too. The thing about Dave Chappelle that and then I've watched all these people that were triggered by certain things that he said, and I think
they always do.
They're all. But that's the funny thing. I think that Dave Chappelle is one of the great storytellers of our time. He's not just a great comedian, but he's one of the great historian. And social thinkers. I mean, and what he does is everyone thinks, like, when he says things, immediately they take him. They're like, "Oh, I'm offended" or something at face value. But they're not really stopping to consider what he's actually saying. And that's, I find his comedy specials surprisingly rewatchable. Like, I just love his delivery and the way he tells the story. I think he's a master at it. He's honed his craft for a long time. I mean, he's been doing it since he was a teenager. And I thought the same thing with his new special. And what I find really interesting is we are living in a time where the gender roles are being dismantled, and romance itself is being taken apart, and like the feminine, like if you watch the Whatever podcast, if you ever watch that, or where this guy was always talking to OnlyFans models, you have a whole generation of women that they have been almost dehumanized to the point where they think they've been sold a bill of goods that being an OnlyFans model and making $100,000 a month is somehow empowering. Well, maybe for a while, but what are you going to do when you're 40? What are you going to do when you're 30? And you're
going to always be objectified, bro.
Always.
Obviously.
I mean, can you imagine how they don't even realize that if you're objectifying yourself down to body parts, I mean, you're literally taking yourself apart in a certain way. And what's interesting about our hero's journey stories, and this is kind of what I was still thinking about, is that our stories are being bled of passion. They're being bled. Romance is just one angle of it. But love, like you were saying, Lael, I mean, the Jedi represent love. And I think that, unfortunately, Star Wars was created by a guy who's, he loved cars, and he was kind of a nerdy dude. And I created Star Wars. It's not like he's some great Lothario that he made. It's funny because American Graffiti that he made right before Star Wars was about his awkward teen years, and if you want to go, the Charles Martin Smith character is basically George Lucas, even though he wants to be Harrison Ford. And I do think that we need passion, we need romance, and we need that fiery. It's being bled out of our culture, and I think by design. I think that if you go back and you look at certain things that have been injected into our culture, it has been very purposeful, it has been very directed, and it has been something that is being done on purpose. If you look at things like, we have declining birth rates in all the countries of the Western world. People aren't having kids anymore. They're not having families anymore. You have the rise of people that are declaring themselves non-binary, which is interesting because if you're saying you're not something, they're saying they're non-this, but what are they? There's I know some non-binary people, and I haven't asked anybody this, but I'm like, okay, you're non-binary. You're identifying as something that doesn't. What are you identifying as? You're identifying as something you're not. But then what are you? And where is love in your life, and how do you find it? What are you looking for? And I'm curious about this as our culture develops and navigates these currents and eddies and things. what are people going to, where are we all going to wind up? Are we all going to wind up alone? You know, or are we going to just not declare that we are something? We're just going to say what we're not. I'm non this. And that's weird to me, because my first question, it didn't used to be that way, but I want to know who people are.
Yeah.
You know, and part of the hero's journey is your discovery, your sense of self-discovery.
Yeah.
And what are you? And I think Rey, her story was she didn't know who she was. She didn't know where she came from. She didn't know who her parents were. And what's interesting is that is something we could all identify with. From a storytelling point of view, not knowing who you are and where you're from is a great place to start a story. Mm-hmm. And yet, at the same time, they never really dealt with that at all. They just, it was a cursory thing. I've been left here by my parents. They never answered that question. By the way, they didn't know.
It should be a coming of age story of Rey, that first film, where she discovers so many things about herself. And, you know, since it's not going to be sexually explicit, which is what I would have preferred, go ahead and
yeah, but
make
it's Star Wars,
where,
man.
No, I'm just saying, like, go ahead and, like, she's having sexually explicit dreams. So you can get out of the notion of her. Well, think about it.
I know, but that's it's a Disney look.
It's a Star Wars film.
It's also it's a family. I mean, the Star Wars franchises. I mean,
okay, a more neutral romantic dream where she dreams about being with a man, and the man happens to be John Boyega. You know, and she's like, who's this man? Why do I keep dreaming about this man in my dreams? Automatically, now it's incredibly romantic, the notion of it, as she comes of age and discovers herself.
What could have really been interesting is that could have been a way to lead her into the Force, because it was the Force, in a way, putting people together. And
it awakened both of them, bro.
Yes, that's exactly, and that's what it called. You had two. The movie's called The Force Awakens.
Yeah,
and if you had two people in different tracks, you had a stormtrooper with a conscience. Mm-hmm. Great idea. You know, a trained Imperial officer, not a clone, but a trained Imperial officer who develops a conscience. Why does he develop a conscience? Because of the Force. Yeah. And at the same time, he's feeling a stirring because someone else in Rey doesn't know has anything to do with the Force, but
they
Force
have a connection.
There's a connection.
And it's not just the connection through the Force itself, it's a shared story. Mm-hmm. Finn himself was stripped from his family at a young age. He doesn't know where his family is. He doesn't know where he's from, because again, he was conditioned at a very young age. And it's a discovery between both of them. Both of them together can basically learn together. They can discover together. Both of them have a shared experience. The Force, not only just basically through the Force, but a feeling of loss and separation and discovery of who they really are.
How interesting
was a perfect opportunity.
And it can happen now. It can happen in the new film. They can do this in the new film.
I mean, how interesting would it have been to show? Because to my mind, the aspects of the Force have never really been delved into. You know, except in The Empire Strikes Back. You know, when you actually see Yoda telling us, you know, between the tree, the rock, the Force surrounds us and binds us. You know, we're learning all about that. And the thing is, there's another controversy. People look, every single person, as they tell us, every single thing in the universe is part of the Force, the living Force. And if you can tap into it, some people are going to be more adept than others. But the Force should be accessible to everyone. You shouldn't just have midi-chlorians. The whole point about I want to go to Alderaan and learn the ways of the Force. You know, people can learn the ways of the Force, whether they're successful or not. Like, I'd love to be LeBron James. No amount of training is going to allow me to be LeBron James. I could have shot 100,000 shots. I would never be the basketball player that LeBron James is, no matter what, because some people are just more equipped naturally than others are to do things.
Say never, Rob.
But
you know,
can you tell me what is the point of Jabba the Hutt and the underworld? What are they doing? What are they trading in? What are they selling in?
Well, that's the thing. That's my big objection to the Star Wars universe is they have, some of the novel writers have done that, but I think the real problem with Star Wars, that's why I loved Andor so much. They spent time, and you got to see. There's a lot of people. Oh, Andor was boring because the fantasy aspects were moved aside, and they were dealing with the actual day-to-day reality of what this universe would actually be like.
And people had sex in that show, and he goes to a place where you would go and have sex. And I thought that makes sense because people do have sex and they need to do this, and it has to be dealt with some way in the galaxy. It's not going to be just like the way it's dealt with on every single planet. There's going to be different places where you can go, and people need that intimacy. It's something that they need. It's real.
But
it's tangible.
It is, but with, and you know me, we're all about the cheeks and the fucking here. I mean, I'm all about getting my cheeks wet either side. You know, I'm all about that. But Star Wars as a franchise is not going to be a franchise where they're ever going to delve into the fucking. We're not going to get it.
They should do something to liven it up just a bit.
Well, but I think we're talking about what they need is great storytelling, and they need great. What is a story? Don't we? No one makes you laugh more than we make you laugh on this show, Lael. Come on. Isn't that true?
What?
Come on.
Anakin doing in bed together. What were they doing? Were they just sleeping? Come on.
Well, yeah, but okay, but it's like.
I'm just saying, it's something must have happened. They were shown in bed on purpose to show that they were having an intimate relationship, and anyone can understand that. Although we didn't see them having sex literally, they were sleeping together. I mean,
yeah, but the thing is, okay, look, it's still Star Wars. It's a family-friendly 4-quadrant franchise, and the thing is, I honestly believe. I'll tell you something. You know, I'm filthy. My movie collection, I have a great collection of 70s bush porn that's been restored for HD. But I'm also somebody that I don't like to hear swearing in Star Trek. When people say fuck in Star Trek, it totally takes me out because Star Trek was conceived as a 4-quadrant show for a certain audience. Game of Thrones, give me all the nudity. You know, give me guys screwing other guys, girls doing other girls. Give me all of that. I like to watch it all. I love it all. But
it's whenever it suits that narrative.
Yes,
for
and
a Star Trek film before a Star Wars film. Nah.
If there was a sex scene, like an R-rated or even NC-17 rated sex scene in a Star Wars movie, it would totally take me out of it.
Yeah.
It would because suddenly it's incongruous to what Star Wars is. Now, it would depend. Andor was changing the tone. And now Andor is a different thing. I could have maybe bought it in that. But what I'm talking about is what you guys have been describing. The Finn Rey story. If that were The Force Awakens, that could have been one of the great. It would have elevated that film to a whole different level. And it's this sort of carbon copy of Star Wars that while you can watch it and there's visually it's fun to watch. I mean all that, but as soon as she gets behind the wheel of the Millennium Falcon and flies it like the most experienced pilot in the galaxy, I'm like, wait, what? I mean, and people are like, well, you buy that Luke's a pilot because people keep talking about Luke being a pilot. Ben Kenobi meets. I hear you're not a bad pilot yourself. I used to bullseye Womp Rats in my T-16 back home. When I watched Force Awakens, I'm like, when did Rey, as she was shown to exist, how did she ever get behind the wheel of anything that flew? All she has is a speeder, and she lives by herself in the wreckage of an AT-AT. And there's nothing in that movie. So when I get to that film, and she flies the Falcon, even if she's strong with the Force doesn't tell you what buttons to push. You know, and it makes no sense. And then when she's flying through the wreckage of a Star Destroyer and she's flying against First Order pilots and is able to take them out with Finn, I mean, I know he's a stormtrooper. I'm watching that movie and I'm like, you haven't earned this. None of it's earned. You know, she's just, and here's the thing about, people call her a Mary Sue. Here's the thing about it drives me crazy because the definition of a Mary Sue is not that. A Mary Sue, and it happened in Star Trek fiction, was when the author of the story basically inserts themselves into the story and makes themselves the hero. and there's evidence of that. The character, like now it's changed to be that a character like Rey can do anything, so she's a Mary Sue. I get that. I understand how it works. It's just that's not the way I was introduced to it.
That was never the narrative. That was never the meaning of.
Yeah, it was,
bro. It's the same, and was one of the reasons why I put up the true definition of woke today. Again, people will use it for their own nefarious.
Well, it just gets
narrative,
it gets to the point where I understand. To me, what people are talking about when they call Rey and Mary Sue, they're just talking about bad writing. And the thing is, those characters, it was like, and J.J. Abrams does this all the time. He uses narrative shortcuts because he's a TV writer, and it's like, okay, we just know this character. And let's just get to her being a Jedi. And it's like, but that's not Star Wars. You have to show us how and why a character is a Jedi. You can't just make them one, because we all know that you can't just be one. Even if you're Force sensitive. I mean, Luke Skywalker had to train, you know, and she has no inkling. There's nobody there to train her. And in that movie, the thing that drives me fucking crazy when I watch that, it's not just the Millennium Falcon, but it's never established that she can do any of the things that she's shown to do. She's a scavenger in the desert. That's what she's trained to do. And that's what she's shown to do. Like I've said to people that movie should have opened instead of her in the desert like Tatooine, if she was in orbit flying some kind of a salvage vessel, because all the wreckage, instead of just a Star Destroyer on the ground, like J.J. Abrams is adverse to showing starships in space. He's always wanting to stick everything on the ground. But what if the wreckage of that Star Destroyer was in orbit around Jakku? And she'd been working for Unkar Plutt, and she's become an incredibly adept pilot because there's so much wreckage around the planet that it's difficult to move. And she's shown as being like this ace pilot in some kind of weird salvage vessel. That would have been, first of all, I think more interesting than being in a desert. And two, it would have immediately solved the problem of her being a crack pilot. She's a self-taught pilot, but that's because out of necessity, she's learned how to navigate basically a planet that is encircled with just detritus from the last big battle of the Empire. And that would have been Star Wars. It would have been interesting, and it would have solved the narrative problem. But
all right, let me ask you a quick question, Ron. Okay, so when we're and I get exactly what you're saying, but I just all right. So even though Phantom Menace, we know that Anakin is the chosen one as a kid. We just basically see him as a pod racer at that point, right? We've never really seen him pilot a ship. But then once we get the Naboo, he's piloting a Naboo starfighter. Now it's because, again, he's strong in the Force.
Well,
so I mean, there was no. No, mind you, I'm not challenging you. I'm just saying.
No, but
when we look at those scenarios, what do you feel about that?
But the pod racing, I mean, that kid was a prodigy. Pod racing is like, in my mind, if you can pod race, you're one of the great pilots in the galaxy. Because you're dealing with the forces of physics, gravity. You're still a pilot, so that wasn't a stretch for me to make that leap.
And here's the reason why I say that, because there was a cut scene. There was supposed to be and this is where, again, like you said, and I can agree completely. This is where J.J. Abrams completely fucked up. There was a scene that was in the trailer that we didn't see in the film. And there was a scene in the trailer, whereas we seen Rey jump on her sand speeder, her speeder itself, and she was in pursuit. She was being pursued. And we seen how it was supposed to be how she was navigating. She was just, I mean, literally fearlessly navigating through certain things, going fast as hell on her sand speeder. That would indicate that, you know, she could be an evasive pilot, but we never got a chance to see that because there were a lot of cutscenes. They cut a lot of that out of that film. And if you would have shown those aspects of her as a really fierce, pilot or something like that, it would have made more of a reference point. But I agree. Like, we didn't get a chance to see that, and because they didn't put that in the film, this is what we were left with. And again, it made, this is the thing, it's like the way it was written, the way he did the character, even though the character had potential, even the way that Ryan Johnson did the character, even though that character had potential, the character itself, the actress herself, I did not mind that. Again, there were a lot of things that were forced, and they didn't give the character a chance to breathe. They made it way too easy for her.
Right.
Way too easy for her.
Well,
and they didn't give her risk. They didn't give her the challenges that we wanted to see. Hell, even if Kylo Ren would have cut her hand off or something, just something, it would have just made for, again, for something else. I mean, they just didn't give it that. And again, I say that because I understand the flaws that you're saying. I get all that. All the flaws that you were talking about right now, I completely get. Even though I like the character, and even though I do want to give the character a chance.
And I think Daisy Ridley's a good actress.
Yes, she's an amazing actress, bro. Like, I just saw, like, it was one of the films, I think it was just released yesterday, as a matter of fact. And I just watched it. I forget the name of it. It was good. Like, it was really
the one where she was
good.
in the woods?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a good film, and I can't wait to see the other film that she's actually in. So she's a great actress. If given the chance, this character could be and has potential, but I think they set her up for failure because they didn't give her a good narrative. They didn't give her a good story.
I think there's a real problem, especially with these fantasy stories, that the people that are writing them do not have a great grasp of. Look, these are all very classical stories. Like I said, it goes all the way back to whether it's the Ring of the Nibelung cycle, whether it's Gilgamesh, whether it's Beowulf, whether it's the Iliad and the Odyssey. I mean, you talk to people, if you haven't read the great works, if you haven't read Homer, and you don't know those tales, you're missing out. And it's like the great canon of science fiction. When I watch a lot of science fiction now, I'm like, look, there's 25 books, every science fiction. Anyone who's going to write science fiction television, science fiction movie, there's 25 books you got to read. There's it's like when you're studying literature, there's the Western canon, there's the Greeks, the Romans, whatever. If you're going to study poetry, you're going to have to read like Ralph Whitman, and you're going to have to read Yeats, and you're going to have to read, T.S. Eliot. There's things you have to read to understand. You have to read Shakespeare. If you don't know, you don't have to read every Shakespeare play, but if you haven't read, in my mind, if you haven't read Hamlet, and you haven't read Romeo and Juliet, and you haven't read Macbeth, and you haven't read maybe Titus Andronicus, but you don't know how to write. Like, these are things, these are the very basis of our storytelling. If you haven't, like, I'm not religious, but you have to read the Bible. You should read the Quran too. You really should. Because these are the basis of our of 2,000 years of history, and people have been drawing on these things. I'm not up on my Asian literature. I'm sure that reading like the Bhagavad Gita that Oppenheimer quotes. I am become death. That all that stuff is all relevant to. Just like you have to see some movies. There's Seven Samurai is, to me. If you're gonna make a Star Wars movie and you don't know Kurosawa, what the fuck are you making a Star Wars movie for?
Exactly, because that's the reference point.
What we have, because what's happening, Robert, just like that romance writer who felt that she was a romance writer and she was doing unromantic things with her time. There are people who think that they're science fiction writers, and they don't understand what science fiction is about, but they're saying, I'm a science fiction writer, therefore I can write for any kind of thing that's out there. And it's not actually true. What they're producing is not necessarily science fiction, and what they're producing is not necessarily romance. They believe that what they're doing is romantic. However, the quality of what they're producing doesn't fit within that genre, and it suffers very badly. And that's when we get things like, unfortunately, the sequels. Much of the sequels fell outside. It's an adventure story, but it's not necessarily romantic, nor do I consider it science fiction.
That's a good point.
For example, I don't consider horses riding in space science fiction.
Well, that was another thing. Here's the funny thing about, like, J.J. Abrams has these images that he wants to show the world. and they get into his head. Like he can't. Why does he always have to have starships coming out of ice or water or whether it's a Star Destroyer, whether it's a Starship Enterprise? I mean, it's such a stupid thing because the very construction, this just irks me to no end. A starship, the Enterprise, the way it's designed from its conception is that it doesn't land. And one of the things this kills me, I cannot stand this. In Star Wars, and George Lucas is guilty of this, seeing the capital ships that we saw, when you see a Star Destroyer for the very first time, you know that ship's not going, it doesn't land. There's no aerodynamic, there's no power in the universe that can cause a ship that big to be able to land on a planet. And then what do? And that's what made it cool, you know. And whenever you see like the Kuwait, was Star Destroyers built in the Kuwait shipyards? What were the okay?
Yeah, they are. And they never enter atmospheric space.
Well, but you do see they've changed that around because like in Solo, you see them built in space, but then by the time you get to Andor, you've seen or they're on the you see them on the ground. They can't even decide like. Corellian freighters like the Millennium Falcon. I believe the Millennium Falcon lands. You know, the Tana V4, whatever, the Rebel Blockade Runner, whether it's Tantive, whatever. That ship I believe can land, but a Star Destroyer shouldn't be able to land. And then what do they do in Attack of the Clones? You see all the Rebel. You see are those the Venerator class or is that Revenge of the Sith? I can't remember. But the Star Destroyers are on the ground. And it kind of takes away the mystique. Now, I understand in Rogue One, seeing a Star Destroyer over Jeddah is a cool image. But when I look at it, I'm like, a Star Destroyer shouldn't be sitting in the sky like that. Because I ask myself, in what universe, I know it's the Star Wars universe, can a ship that's that big, a mile long, just sit? How is it the power it would need to anti-gravity? I don't believe it. And they keep doing that to Star Wars, but most of all, they're doing it to the characters. You know, the Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back are the most beautiful examples of fantasy film world building ever, in my mind. Star Wars, the original Star Wars, watching it when I was there, opening weekend, no one had ever seen anything like it. And everything in that movie was constructed to the point where you got it all. Like, you understood that what the Clone Wars were, but just enough that you're like, okay, we don't quite know what it is yet. Your father fought in the Clone Wars, you know, and all that. That was intriguing enough. But then when somebody decides to delve into what the Clone Wars actually were, and I know it's George Lucas's playground, but it's unfortunately the stuff that he was writing, he was delving into things that he made them too simplistic. And I think that he himself in the prequel trilogy, his ideas were good. The execution was lacking. But the ideas were cool. The idea of Republic becoming a empire is a great idea. And that's ripe for examination. It just and I feel as we've gotten further down the line with all of Disney Star Wars has spun out of control into gobbledygook. Some of it's good. Some of it's not good, but it's like, you know, they've forgotten that, look, if you're going to tell a story about Boba Fett, why aren't you watching The Godfather and Goodfellas and Scarface? It seems silly, but that's what Boba Fett should have been. It should have been a crime thriller. That's what you're doing. You're working within that genre. So make it heat. Because Lucas was looking not at yes, he was inspired by Flash Gordon. He couldn't get the rights for it. But he was looking to Kurosawa. He was looking to samurai movies to inform the Jedi. And I feel that the people that are making Star Wars now, they don't even know these things. And I'm watching it and like, we have to... And I feel that way about our major comic book films too. The people that are making them, or Star Trek Discovery. Like, what are you looking at? What are you inspired by? Have you read books? Have you looked at things? The stories you're telling are just full of gobbledygook. And I hate that. And that's what's killing our franchises.
There's another element to this too, and it has to do with, I'm going to say, writers that I know who are writing episodes and television movies who have been approached by eager, I'm going to say opportunists who want to get into writing. They want to become writers. And never before have I seen such an encouraging type of environment to bring in new writers. And that's wonderful. That is fantastic. But the general misunderstanding of what it means to be a writer who's writing for television and movies, as a writer, you have a catalog of stuff you've written practically your whole life, and a lot of it no one takes or buys, and you keep it, and you've poured your heart into all of these different stories or screenplays, whatever it is. Finally, when someone does see it, they want to change a lot of what you have put your heart and soul into. They want to change it all up. And, with the understanding that you have this creation, and it probably is based on a lot of research and experience, and it very, maybe even you were inspired by, let's say, biblical stories or Roman Empire stories. Whatever it is that inspired you to write that story, you've written this screenplay, and it's like your child almost that you've created. And we're not seeing that level of research or honestly commitment to work that's coming out, with the notion of a person saying, I just want to break into writing. I'm just going to go ahead and do it. And what are my opportunities? Well, we're looking for anybody who fits in this particular demographic. That has absolutely nothing to do with your writing. Nothing. It has to be a quality story. And if they're asking for science fiction, it has to fall in that category. If they're asking for romance, it has to fall in that category. And by the end, your story isn't going to resemble anything like what you've written. If you can handle that, then you'll be a great writer. But we're not seeing necessarily treatment in that way in some of what's been produced, especially for some superhero television programs and movies. We're actually seeing stuff that does not necessarily look constructed in a complex fashion. It looks quite thrown together. And that's why it's so alarming, because we've seen high quality work, high science fiction, high art. We've seen even the classics from 100 or 200 years ago.
Well, that's what I mean.
We've
seen what's good. We know what's good.
Finesse, that have more finesse, that have more content, even just basic structure of what makes a story honestly watchable and entertaining. A lot of what we're getting isn't necessarily the most entertaining stuff. They made it, they put it together, but maybe you don't want to see, Hobbit-like creatures that look that way. Maybe it's not entertaining to see elves that don't look like elves. These types of aesthetic considerations are not necessarily being followed, because the notion now is this freedom to kind of go outside of the parameters of the definition of what a Jedi is, of what an elf is, of what, and these are going outside of things that we already have established in rules in the stories. So now you are kind of changing it, but in the end, it's not necessarily entertaining by making all these changes. And you can go ahead and make that film, you can make that television program, but it may not be entertaining.
I think so. Here's the thing: it's okay to make, and I'm not opposed to making any changes, as long as they are necessary changes, and as long as they are paying homage to what came before. What I mean by that is, if you have an understanding of where it started, and that's pretty much, put it this way, and I always associate that I always want to go back to music, and I'm always going to do that because I'm a musician.
Yes,
it's like you don't know where you're going until you know where you've been. Plain and simple. You don't know how, in hip hop, you have to basically pay homage to the greats that came before what we have now. And we see a lack of that because, again, people don't know history. People don't study. They don't learn. They don't read. They don't listen. This is the way this new age is right now. So, again, when we're seeing these changes that are orchestrated on film, when it comes to writing, directions, whatever, again, it's you're making the changes, but the reason why the changes don't make sense is because they're not well connected to what came before. Like you're not seeing it to whereas, okay, we know what this was. We understand that. We have a clear grasp of what this was. This is how we're going to take what we know from this and expand it into something that's completely different, but it makes sense. Right now, it's completely disconnected, because they don't go back and look at source material. The source material is there, but they refuse to use it because everybody's trying to always one up each other. We want to do something better. We want to do something different. We want to do something new. And this is one of the things that I heard that was really, really strange to me. And I was like, well, how could you say this? Because, all right, I'll give you an example. The director of the Flash film, he said the reason why he didn't basically give us Flashpoint was because he felt as though everybody wanted something new, that they would understand. We're going to, the fans want something new. What? Are you kidding me? Like, when you say Flashpoint, and that's basically what it was at that point, it was Flashpoint. You made that reference before you changed it. That's what people were thinking about. And that's where people's minds were on that aspect of it. So when you're saying that people, and you're using that as a reference point, and we know what the story is, but you're saying that people want something different. Who are you to think for fans who know the story, who know the narrative, who have followed this journey from day one? Who are you to think for them, but yet you're using and taking references from it and doing something completely different that makes absolutely no sense? That's my point. You're making changes, but you're not paying homage to what came before.
Okay, I think that's there's something I wanted to read. It was an essay that appeared in Deadline, and it was written by Bill Mechanic, who is one of the great moguls. He worked for a lot of the major studios. He did a lot of amazing stuff in his career. And he wrote a great piece slamming what's happening in Hollywood now. And it's just it's a little bit I wanted to read from.
Okay. Yeah, let's hear it.
This is some nakedness in it because other wants to hear it.
No. This is what he says. When the film business originally evolved, it was owned mainly by businessmen, the moguls, who lived or died based on making films their audiences wanted. Ignore their wishes, the audience, and you'd perish. When one indeed failed in the task of satisfying customers, inevitably it was brought by those who were successful in other businesses, whether that was parking lots or cigar factories. The movie business was more interesting. It made them more important, and yes, buried in there was a love of film. Do any of the studios love movies today? Sure, there are plenty of good people in every studio, but does the studio itself display that love? I'd argue not enough. Things are made because something else like it worked, or it was based on a piece of high-profile IP. I hate that term. To quote Fight Club, a copy of a copy. Not what someone's gut is telling them just might work. Every time something original breaks through, it's because the talent is pushing it, not the studio. Without Margot Robbie, there's no Greta Gerwig, and without Gerwig, there's no originality to Barbie. Chris Nolan, whose love and appreciation of movies and audiences supporting movies is a godsend, is the sole reason we were treated to Oppenheimer. It certainly wasn't the studio looking for a 3-hour-plus movie, partially in black and white about the invention of the atom bomb. No. Here's the adage that I believe is a great truth, yet is often made light of. What works is good movies. Movies people want to talk about, want to tell others about, want to see what audiences want to laugh or cry or sit in scared silence surrounded by people. Stop asking why the original pictures work. They work when they're good. For the corporate owners of the studios, however, it's a quest for content, a quest to own what flows through their own pipes so revenue doesn't get shared. With talent, with theaters, with cable, greed, as Gordon Gekko said, is good. Today, when a film doesn't reach $1 billion in revenue, it's a waste of resources. Good never even enters the equation. If it breaks $1 billion and no one likes it, don't worry, make a sequel. Size is viewed as a more important asset. Take over a competitor and you gain leverage. 1 + 1 = 3 in their minds. So far, 1 + 1, however, doesn't seem to even equal 2. The studios today are all losing hundreds of millions, chasing Netflix and other streamers they ironically helped create, giving them all the product they needed to flourish, but blindly barreling along that chase, thinking they see all, despite groping their stares unlit. They don't realize movies aren't fueling growth in streaming. but are rather victims of it. In perusing Netflix's viewing data release, only 8 movies are in the top 300 most watched, and none is a major film. As a consumer, I find it impossible to track down virtually any movie I might have missed in theaters. So I mean, this is a great essay, and I you know what? I'll throw this into the live chat. It's a great thing because, and this is my problem. Like Charmin Obaid Chinoy, who's directing the REY movie, she's made animated films, she's made shorts, but she hasn't made one feature film that you would look at and go, "Oh my God, I want to see a Star Wars movie directed by her." She was hired because she's a female director and an activist, which I said I have no problem with. And I appreciate it being Pakistani, and what she's trying to do is fight for the rights of women in her home country and women around the world. Great. I love that. I'll give it to her. But she's been picked to make a Star Wars movie. And a Star Wars movie should appeal to everybody. Star Wars appealed to everybody. Boys, girls, men, women. My mom, my grandparents, they all loved Star Wars. My dad loved Star Wars too. Star Wars was for everyone. It wasn't a story. I mean, look at Princess Leia. You look at and you have to look at Princess Leia as the archetype of all women in Star Wars. She, in the beginning of that movie, she's the first person toe to toe with Darth Vader. I mean, then she goes in front of Tarkin and lies to his face. She's on the Death Star, Dantooine. They're on Dantooine. You know, and then when Alderaan is destroyed, you can see that there is her feminine. There's the loss of life. You know, her as a daughter, as a leader, as a princess. You see what the loss of life does to the feminine. She's always allowed to be feminine, yet she's a strong person. And I mean, she's a badass. And it's earned. You see her from the what is she doing when she's introduced? Did you hear that? They've shut down the main reactor. There'll be no escape for the princess this time. And what is she doing? In the midst of all that, while the Empire is literally bearing down on her, while her ship is being boarded by Vader and stormtroopers, she's secreting the Death Star plans into R2-D2. She's making sure they get off the ship and the mission is done. And she has a gun and takes out stormtroopers before she's marched in front of Vader. I mean, you want a strong female character? I give you Princess Leia Organa of Alderaan. I mean, come on. That's the first character that we see. And she's seen as a badass. She in the first 5 minutes of the fucking movie. And now it's like I have to listen to some, you know, we're going to have an activist director make a film about REY, and they make it sound like, oh, well, you know, this is going to be the first time it's about time that a woman steps up. And it's like, look, it's not about you stepping up. It's about the great story that you're going to tell about the great characters in the Star Wars universe that was, set up, when? In 1977.
Well, the treatment of the introduction of this director is almost as if you're looking at a sheet and, you know, as you're a director, you've got a contract with the studio and you have to make 10 films in the course of a year, and they're all B films. And, you know, they have to stick within budget and stay on the script. And perhaps those B films are okay, but the type of film that Star Wars is, it's not supposed to be a B film. If it was going to be a B film, that's one thing, but we all know that we're not expecting a lower quality film. So it has to be somebody who's passionate for the project. And I also think that making a Star Wars film, you have a certain responsibility, just like from that article, although I'm not quite sure if the article said it. In addition to loving the work that you produce, it does inspire other creators. If your work isn't inspiring anyone, while it is satisfying to make that work, there is a certain level of satisfaction hearing other creators talk about how they were inspired by your work, and it encouraged them to continue on, whether it was for writing or directing, whatever it is. And now they've gone on to do that. Greta Gerwig talked about how she was inspired by musicals and all sorts of other works and incorporated that into the Barbie film, which made it a much more dynamic film. I think we still need to see creators get inspired by other works, and we're expecting to be inspired by Star Wars. I dress in cosplay because I'm inspired by the characters. We want that inspiration. We want people to be creative and to have that type of encouragement. You're passing the torch of creativity from one person to another. It is, in a sense, a responsibility as a creator, especially for the moving image.
Well, you look, Lael, I just want to say, if you haven't read this book, Rick Rubin, the producer, who produced, he's done so many records. He's produced albums I love, like for The Cult. He produced the Beastie Boys. He has a new book out on creativity that I can't recommend highly enough. You can see interviews. He's done some interviews about it lately. And he talks about, he's like, look, when I do something, I do it for myself. And I know that if I make something that pleases me with my high standards, I know that other people are gonna appreciate it because I've put all of myself into something. And I feel that a lot of these, why is it because I've worked on films myself. I mean, I'm a filmmaker, and when I'm a filmmaker, I'm trying to make the best thing I can make with whatever. I've never had the opportunity to work on something that I've been able to make unfettered. I've always worked in the low budget indie world, which is always, it's a rough place to be, but you do what you can. But I see that at the studio level, at this large scale level, like what Bill Mechanic was saying in the article, they're just looking to turn a profit. And what is missing, the reason that Barbie made as much money as it made was because Greta Gerwig wrote it with her husband, Noah Baumbach. They tried to do something unique and interesting. I thought Barbie was great. I thought for what it was, I thought it was really, really great because it was unique and interesting. The actors were great, and they knew what they wanted to do, and they succeeded. In Star Wars, I would love to see a creator that truly loves Star Wars, but also you don't hear about. Here's the thing: Patty Jenkins fucked up her. I mean, Wonder Woman 84 was terrible, and she fucked it up. But I was really curious to see her make Rogue Squadron because she talked about her father being a pilot. And that she was on Air Force bases and she was on the runways, and that promo they made of her that zooms up on the airfield where the X-Wing fighter is sitting there. I think it's unfortunate that they didn't stick it out with her because she made Monster. She made the first Wonder Woman. Look, I thought Wonder Woman 84 was entirely, we got a great hot toy out of it, but it was entirely misconceived. But that doesn't mean she wanted to make an X-Wing movie because she had a passion that came out of her family. I'm like, I'd rather see her make that X-Wing movie than somebody who's not passionate about Star Wars just get a job. And I think that the problem that I have with this new director, and I'll give her the benefit of the doubt, is this new director has never come out and said, I love Star Wars. Here's what I love about Star Wars. I can't wait to make a Star Wars movie because here's what I'm going to bring to it. And even
no, go ahead.
No, and that's, now I'm not saying, I think her background makes her an interesting choice because, but making a $200 million Star Wars movie is not easy. Even Gareth Edwards, who directed Rogue One, Tony Gilroy had to come in and help him, who the showrunner of Andor. And you don't have to love Star Wars. Tony Gilroy didn't love Star Wars when he made Andor. Nicholas Meyer didn't love Star Trek when he made Wrath of Khan. But both of those guys are great storytellers. Yes. They had already made great movies. They're classically inclined. They know their craft. I mean, I'll tell you something. If you've never seen Michael Clayton, the George Clooney movie, it has nothing to do with Star Wars. But when you watch that movie, I'm like, I want that guy to make a Star Wars movie. I'd love, because the story he was telling, he knows how to tell a great story that's shattering. The end of that movie has one of the greatest, I mean, it's not somebody getting punched in the face, but the revenge that George Clooney, the comeuppance that he is able to navigate and put upon Tilda Swinton is so satisfying. I'm like, that guy, when they announced him to do Andor, I'm like, fuck yeah, Academy Award winning screenwriter making Andor. Why aren't they going after these people to make Star Wars? Why aren't we getting the best of the best to make Star Wars? When I hear Christopher McQuarrie say, I'm not going to work on a Star Wars movie, people are going to hate what I do. I'm like, I would love to see Christopher
that's the biggest problem though, Rob. Honestly, it's not, and the thing is people can be as dismissive as they want to be, but let's just be honest. The problem is, okay, we have a lot of these potentially some of these great directors that would potentially be great for the job. I mean, they would definitely be great to, really, they would fit the narrative that we would want to see on screen. The problem is, bro, there's a couple of different issues. We can talk all day and say it's about, studio execs who get themselves involved, who are pushing this button and pushing this needle forward based on their idea of what they think the franchise should be. Because again, all they want to do is sell merchandising. They want to make money. That's just where it is. And they know nothing about it. It's the same thing, and the same thing we see in Hollywood is the same thing we see in the music industry. That's how it's basically been. So we can basically say it's that. That's one aspect of it. You know what I mean? We can say that it's poor writing. Okay, yeah, that's one aspect of it. We can say that, okay, maybe they're not picking up the best director. But even if they did, and say that they would, and we see, directors and actors who we think that would be great in certain roles, what have a lot of them said, bro? A lot of them have said the same thing. They see how toxic sometimes fandom can be.
Right.
Like they do. And the thing is, we can't deny that, bro, because we see the same things. We do.
It's true.
We see the same exact thing. People want something different. They want something good. But then are we giving people a chance to give us that? Because immediately we're on the attack. Because we'll basically say that it's not going to be go. No, this is going to be trash. This, that, and the third. Like this shit is going on and it continues to happen. But the thing is, if you point that out, then people live in this denial phase. Oh, no, that's not happening. No, I don't see it that way. We just want something good. Yeah, you want something good, but then you're attacking the people that could possibly give us that. Or you're shunning, or people are afraid to touch the franchise because there's always constant complaining, or there's constant finger pointing, or you're basically just threatening actors, directors, and their integrity, their families, and there's threats and all this other shit. Like, who wants that, bro?
No one. Oh, but you make it's a great point. By the way, we lost RM. I hope she'll come back. Oh, she's still there. You are?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, good. You're still there.
Yeah, I'm still here. 1 second.
No. Okay, it's good. Good. So what I was going to say, first of all, we have many super chats and many people want to get in on this conversation. There's a lot of great comments, and I'd like to read some of those. Let me put you back. There we go.
Sorry.
No. I just want to rifle through these super chats because we were talking about Lael before you got here about For All Mankind, and Joe Panora sends in a super chat and says they do inclusion without sacrificing a great story. I'm like, yeah. I mean, I've often said one of the great things about For All Mankind is it's the kind of thing that does all kinds of representation in a wonderful way, and they really incorporate it well. And whether you're talking about race relations, LGBTQ, international relations, For All Mankind is a show that is very well considered in that arena.
And you certainly wouldn't think there would be a writer for All Mankind who knows absolutely nothing about the space program. That would be crazy to hire someone who knows nothing about the space program, either in the United States or the Soviet Union, whatever. The notion of hiring someone who has no idea what it is, doesn't like the space program, to write For All Mankind seems absolutely ridiculous.
It wouldn't work. I mean, you can see the research, the science of For All Mankind is so accurate. It's such a great. Now, let me see if I can pronounce Richard Okaturo. I think it's Okaturo. Says, hey crew, love you guys. Happy New Year. Have you guys seen American Fiction yet? What are your thoughts? Thanks. I'm dying to see.
One of the greatest films I have ever seen.
I'm dying to see it. It's based on a novel. Jeffrey Wright, one of my favorite actors. Is it great?
I would suggest it to anybody, bro. And the thing is, when they're talking about one of the best films of the year and could potentially get a lot of Oscar nominations, and yes, this is Jeffrey Wright. And the thing is, bro, I am a fan, a super fan of Jeffrey Wright.
All the way back to when he played Basquiat. I'm a huge fan.
Yes, bro. I'm a super fan of his, and what he did in this film was, you know, again, it's not basically, it was the entire cast. It wasn't just a one-man show. It's the entire cast. And
well, John Ortiz is one of my favorite character actors. He's in it too.
Yeah,
I think he's his agent or something. And
yeah, it's such a great film. I would suggest it to anybody and any and everybody to go see. Like I said, I'm gonna, you know, me and Toya definitely gonna go. There's a couple of films we want to see, but yeah, bro, Have
you saw it, Lael? How was it?
It's you know what it is? It's the what is really felt in a film is not just loss, but how family. It's like a really, really a good family film.
Yeah.
But also it does see how culturally we are objectified, bro. Honestly. And what is deemed, what they think, how they think, you know, put it this way, how we're able to produce something that is good and that should be out there, but it's like you don't want to marginalize and just say that you're only good for one aspect or these certain tropes. They point out a lot of tropes in this film, but you got to definitely see it. It's incredible.
I can't wait. I'm dying to see it. So good question, Richard. Thank you for that, and thanks for supporting the channel. Thomas Logan, one of our oldest members, one of the people that I love. Thomas Logan. I've never met him. One day I'm going to get him really drunk. Thomas says, Lucasfilm's run by morons. Rather than announcing the REY movie in April by teasing the story they aim to tell, the announcement was a woman of color is telling a Star Wars story now, which was fairly ridiculous. That's what they led with. That's the thing. I think it's bizarre to me that nowadays that the characters and the story and what you're doing comes second to I don't understand. I mean, like, give me one of my favorite directors is Catherine Bigelow. And they've always, like, she's been I saw my first Catherine Bigelow movie, the first movie she ever directed, she co-directed it. And it was in the 80s. And it's a biker movie that stars Willem Dafoe, and it's called The Loveless. And I saw it at the Seattle International Film Festival. I'm like, this movie is great. And she then went on and directed the unbelievable vampire. There was, in '87, people were talking about, Lost Boys, but my favorite vampire movie was Near Dark. And I love this new program. It's like if you do the devil horns, like, yeah. Wait, will it do it? Yeah. I don't know. And I can make it rain if you put your thumbs down. Maybe. Will you do it? Okay, I guess you won't. But so I didn't think about Catherine Bigelow. I didn't think of her as like the female director Catherine Bigelow. She was Catherine Bigelow, who directed The Loveless and then Near Dark, Blue Steel with Jamie Lee Curtis. She directed Strange Days. She married James Cameron. You know, I never thought of her as a female director. I just thought of her as Catherine Bigelow, who kicked ass. And now it's so weird that everybody wants to tie in gender, race, religion, sexuality, and they want to put those in as if those have anything to do with, I mean, they'll inform the work you do, certainly, but why not just let people be who they are and not have to define them in order to what gain points? What is that all? It drives me crazy. I can't stand it. I'm like, I don't care about your personal life, your politics, your sexuality. I care about the work you do. I care about what you're gonna attempt to bring to a franchise that's existed since 1977. That's what's important. Anything else, whatever I don't care. It has no bearing on whether or not the movie's going to be good. And I feel now, and by the way, I know this for a fact, Hollywood is hiring people based on these things. So they can say, look, we've hired this kind of person. And I'm like, why don't you hire the best person for the job? You know, and try and find people. Why don't you look at
it feels like to me, and honestly, bro, when we talk about this and how they are doing this, and it's like you're trying to point out the simple fact that you're trying to right a wrong that should have been corrected years ago.
That's exactly.
And so
right.
what
That's
you're basically
exactly
doing right now, you're trying to right that wrong. So what you're trying to do is throw it in everybody's face. Well, look what we're doing now. No, motherfucker, you should have been doing this a long time ago.
Yes,
you're just
sir.
doing it now, and you're throwing it in everybody's faces, and now it's coming across it. So what's happening now is something that you want to deem, no, we're course correcting, we're making this right. No, you're painting a target on people now. You are. You're literally painting a target on individuals now, because everything is going to be looked at as a narrative. You're going to be looked at as, okay, no, it's an agenda. This is an agenda that you're trying to follow, instead of giving us, oh, here we go again. And this is where we get the misuse of words like woke or Mary Sue or all this other stuff. It's because, again, this is something that you should have been doing a long fucking time ago. And now, and on the simple fact that now you're being called out for the shit that you didn't do. So now you want to clean it up, but you're going about it the wrong way again.
100%, dude. 100%, yes. But here's the funny thing. I mean, what film is, what these I call them commercially artistic endeavors. You know, I hated it when I was in high school, and someone said, yeah, I used to love this band, but they just were seeking commercial success, so they sold out. I'm like, okay. Anybody that makes a product of any kind, that, like, if you're a band that doesn't want to make money, you never record, you just play live. You don't care. The reason people make product is to sell it. If you want to be an artist, you have to make money. You have to pay for guitars. You have to buy film. You have to buy cameras. You can't make these things without money. They all require cash. And that's not a bad thing. Movies are a perfect example. They're the biggest collision of art and commerce that exists. And it used to be you could make a movie like Hunt for Red October for $30 million and turn a profit. Well, nowadays, when you're working on a global stage, because the way business works, because the way Wall Street wants to run these companies and privately, or I mean, as more and more of these companies are bought by what used to be a private company is bought by a larger concern, they've got shareholders and they've got stock options and prices, and they want to see constant growth. But the thing about that is that kind of thinking doesn't work when you're making artistic product. You know, and because movies, it doesn't matter whether, so here's the thing. If you buy real estate, you know, in the neighborhood you're buying or building your real estate in, say you're building a mixed use building, you know that your square footage gets this much in a comparable building, and you know you're going to have this many tenants, you're going to have this many units, and you can understand before you even make the building how much money and how much revenue that property is going to generate. Get a pretty good idea of that. And you look at the cost analysis, and you're like, okay, I'm going to invest this much money, and I'll make this much money over the course of a period of time. They want movies to be like that, and they're not. They never have been. And nowadays, they're just looking at films like, okay, well, you know, all Marvel movies used to make this much money. Well, because they were good. You know, on the spreadsheet, the spreadsheet doesn't delineate whether something was a good movie or a bad movie. It just delineates that we're making a movie. And the people that are running the studios and making decisions just think, well, there's 23 movies in the Infinity Saga. Of course now, if we just make Marvel movies, they're going to be good. So you, Kevin Feige, you used to make 3 movies, but now we have Disney Plus. So we want you to do 10 shows and 5 movies. And we're gonna triple the output. And they're, of course, because it's Marvel, they'll all be great. Right? and they fuck him. They fuck Kevin Feige. They put him in a position where it's like, the reason that they're as good as they are is because we have the time, the talent, and we have the ability to craft these things properly. You, thinking like Wall Street, you've now just tripled my output. How do you think you can do that without the product suffering? Well, it's Marvel, right? No, we made Marvel what Marvel is. Marvel didn't make us what we are. That's what is not understood from a business perspective. Star Wars is the same thing. Got to make more Star Wars movies. Wow, there used to be, we would make one Star Wars movie every 3 years. Then we stopped making them for a while. And then when George Lucas came back and he made The Phantom Menace, and then he made Attack of the Clones, and he made Revenge of the Sith, there was one every 3 years. And those movies made money. Whether you like the sequels or not, I think the sequels have grown on me, but they made money. Those movies did not lose money. They were big earners. And I will defend Attack of the Clones till my dying day. I think it's way better than people give it credit for. I love the battle on Geonosis.
I think a lot of the prequel, again, I'll live and die on that hill, bro, because like I said, I think the prequels,
but again, it was made.
If you, look, you can say what you want, but at least the stories were cohesive.
And there's sex and babies.
Well, and not only that, but George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars, told a story that was relevant. You know, this is how democracy dies, with thunderous applause. For that line alone, those movies deserve to exist. And that's what Hollywood has completely forgotten. And they're this weird, I mean, with this whole DEI thing, which was injected. You can actually look back. This is very fascinating to me, that I'm obsessed with this idea because I saw a thing today that was talking about race relations in America 10 years ago. And all peoples believed that race relations were on an upswing. We had things like gay marriage. Culture was doing well. This is 10 years ago, doing well. Now it's all in the toilet. All of it. Because of all of what's going, because now they've made it an issue and they've pitted. It was done by design. How do you undermine Western civilization? What you do is you do it from the inside.
Yeah, and against each other.
Yeah, everyone's being pitted against each other.
And you know what was a great okay. So did you see I forget, it was on Netflix. Wasn't a very good film. The ending sucked. But
Leave the World Behind?
Yes.
I did. And while dude, and now there's other people are like, the Obamas are bringing about the apocalypse. I saw a video today about that because first of all, Barack Obama is a reader. He published at the end of every year. He publishes his list of favorite books he read. The reason that movie got produced, that was one of his first out of his gate. He has a production company because he loved that book.
He loved the book,
and I'm like, he read the book. People are like, he wasn't planning. Barack Obama and Michelle Obama are not planning the apocalypse. He liked the book, and you know what? How many other presidents or statespeople are publishing their list of favorite books every year? He's reading books. And people are criticizing, there's a secret cabal. I believe there's all kinds of secret cabals because it's all money, but whatever. But they're not reading books or publishing their 10 best books or buying books they want to make into movies or participating. And Sam Esmail, who's, by the way, remaking Battlestar Galactica, who created Mr. Robot, he directed that movie. And the ending, I mean, I did think the ending was chilling. Mahershala Ali's soliloquy when he talks about, but then there was the one thing that they were scared of. And the whole point of that movie is it's not about planning the apocalypse. That movie is a cautionary tale about, hey, let's not let this happen to us. You know? Because we just pit people against each other and let nature take its course. They say that in the movie. We're there. We are there.
We are there now. We are there right now, bro. We are there right now. That was one of the reasons why I brought that up, because I watched it and I was like, "Yep, people aren't going to like this one, but it's the truth." It is.
By the way, I love this name, Jennifer here. Jennifer instead of Jennifer, Jennifer. I love that. Did a lesson in my writers group based on your advice to to hurt your characters. Give them pain to supply opportunity for growth and arc. They're too scared to hurt Rey or make her weak. That means she'll be a Mary Sue for life. That's very interesting.
That
She'll be so frustrated.
Sonder Atelier. This is interesting. I don't think I've ever seen this. Maybe I have. This is his 10th super chat on a live stream. Although that Sonder that's a guy's name. I don't know. I don't want to assume, but thank you for that, Sonder. Sonder, it's Atelier. Is it Atelier, right? Sonder Atelier. I always say this when I see that name. It's just a cool name. Sonder Atelier. I love that. He says, "Evening, commanders of imagination. Just finished Netflix's Blue-Eyed Samurai, and every episode."
God. Oh my God, I love that show so fucking much. Woo! Thank you. Go ahead and read.
He says, "And every episode left me speechless. This show holds back nothing. Have you guys had a chance to see this masterpiece?"
Fucks.
I haven't watched.
Yes. It is one of the greatest shows on fucking. I
haven't seen it. I gotta watch it all.
Rob, you do not know what you're missing. I'll just say that you do not.
I
know
do
what you're missing.
I've seen the first.
Bro. Oh my God.
I know.
It is so fucking fantastic. I cannot wait for season 2. I cannot wait for season 2. It is a gold mine. And it is fucking phenomenal. It is. That I have never said, bro. I binged it in a day.
Yeah, I got to do that.
Yes, it's incredible. It is. I recommend it to any and everybody. I loved it. Yes. Thank you for that. Who's that? Who just now said
Sonder
that?
Atelier.
Sonder Atelier.
Sonder, my boy.
That
you
was,
and I.
and we should
You
celebrate.
and I.
That's their 10th super chat. There's
You and I.
that getting a
Sonder.
10 thing. Thank you, Sonder.
Hell yeah.
Norwegian Kryptonian says, "I feel like Star Wars needs someone optimistic. I don't care which Lou they use. And having said that, Lucasfilm is in desperate need of fresh blood and new ideas."
I couldn't agree more.
I'm with you there.
I couldn't agree more. And is Lawrence Kasdan still in charge of like writing from a certain aspect?
No. I mean,
Okay.
he co-wrote with J.J. Abrams, but I wish
Okay,
and then he made Solo, obviously, he wrote Solo with Son.
Okay. Yeah, they definitely need some fresh. They need fresh blood, but at the same time, bro, they need people who are invested in the story and doing the research and writing something that is good, and not for the sake of just. How you make money is how you appease the fans and how you make sure that you are giving them something that they love while injecting maybe something new, but at the same time, like you're not negating and just stepping away from a friend. Like you, Rob, I don't like cussing in Star Wars. So when you had a couple times that Poe would say "damn," "big ass," or all this other stuff, I'm like, nah, man, I'm checked out. I don't need that. You really don't need to go that. You know what I mean? Come on, man. So again, I think they need something new, but they actually have to they have to bring back the magic, because right now in certain aspects, aside from shows like Andor, I enjoyed Ahsoka. A lot of people didn't. I enjoyed, there are certain, films that are sprinkled. Like Rogue One, I fucking love Rogue One.
I do too.
Yeah, there are certain gems. There are certain, in Mandalorian. Look, there's gems. There are things out there that they've done that have been great, but there's been inconsistencies, and a lot of this has come because, again, you're more focused on dollars and cents instead of the art itself, and I think that's what's been forgotten. They need to bring some people. They need to bring people who actually love the franchise.
I mean, I think Filoni does love the franchise, but look, the inconsistency of Mandalorian, of Book of Boba Fett, and of Ahsoka shows that, because Dave Filoni hadn't worked in live action, and I'm not going to criticize Dave Filoni, but he has a certain thing that he does and believes in, and his way of, in a way, Dave Filoni is taking from George Lucas, which is fine, but George Lucas was taking from something else. He was being inspired by Campbell. He was being inspired by samurai movies. What I want to talk about is somebody who's inspired by the things George Lucas was inspired by and understands Lucas's wellspring of excitement and inspiration. Because if you're going to George Lucas, it's one step removed. And the thing is, the things that, if you understand George Lucas's conception of the Jedi, and you don't understand the things that inspired him to create the Jedi, you're not getting everything you need to give us the kind of stories that we want. And I think it's a good idea. Now, we have a 3-part question from Retromeister. For sending $40, dude. Thanks, man.
Wow.
Retromeister says, "Evening musings. I noticed something interesting with your topic of The Force Awakens I wanted to share. Something similar happened with Matrix Resurrections with their promo game, which its title was chosen to intentionally as a cruel joke to fans of the series to say they're not the focus anymore. And instead they wanted to focus on an audience that had never seen or heard of the Matrix series in their life, while excluding their biggest customers. Similar to what Star Wars and other IPs are doing today." Now, this is an interesting point Retromeister is bringing up, because here's the thing. Again, this kind of Wall Street thinking. Everyone thinks, first of all, Star Wars is a franchise, and I can tell you this because I was there when it came out, appealed to everybody. Like, there's not an audience in the world that doesn't know what Star Wars is. So the idea that you wouldn't want to appeal to the fans of Star Wars is silly, because the planet Earth is fans of Star Wars. And so they're like, well, the fans are going to, and I'll tell you this, in Hollywood circles, they believe the fans are going to show up anyway. They don't like fans. They're like, why do we have to appease the fans? They don't think of the fans as their core audience. They think of the fans as these weird folks that are a nuisance. Look, fans are your canary in the coal mine. If fans like what you've made, it's a pretty good bet the rest of the world's going to like it too. So if you appeal to the fans, and nowadays fans get so angry because why? Because they're abused. They're abused by the people that make this stuff. And then, of course, they become abusive. It's a vicious cycle. But when you hear the people that are making these things, when I had to watch J.J. Abrams go on the talk show circuit to promote Star Trek 09, and he couldn't wait to tell people how he was never a fan of Star Trek growing up. He was more of a Star Wars guy. And he was saying this while he's promoting a Star Trek movie.
He said that.
And on many different occasions, you can watch it on YouTube. And I'm like,
wow.
I'm like, why would, I'm like, first of all, I hated Star Trek 09 for a number of reasons. I won't get into it here, but it was clear when he made that movie that he had no understanding, nor did he want to try and, what he wanted to try and do, and this is what Paramount wanted to do, was they wanted, because they look at their fan base as this, one of the oldest fan bases. I would argue that Lord of the Rings fan base is older, but they were literary fans and that were turned into movie fans when they saw Jackson's films. I mean, that's the funny thing. Lord of the Rings had a huge fan base before they even made movies. Star Trek was a media product to begin with. But the idea was that Paramount wanted to expand Star Trek beyond the fan base. So they hired someone like J.J. Abrams to turn Star Trek into something else. It didn't work. They spent $200 million on that movie plus marketing, and it didn't even make $500 million. Because what it didn't do was, I mean, if you look at Wrath of Khan, they made Wrath of Khan for like $11 million. It made $80 million back in 1982. If they'd made a movie like Wrath of Khan, or better yet, The Voyage Home, Star Trek The Voyage Home was a movie that appealed to both fans and the general public. Both. And if you make a movie that fans like, it's a pretty good bet that everyone else is going to like it too. But that's not how they think. Fans are the bad people. And now fandom has been, we've been victimized. Our fandom, I mean, take your pick. Whatever pick you take, whatever franchise you're talking about, the people that are running these franchises, and Alex Kurtzman said this about Star Trek. We're more interested in Star Trek to preach the message, our message, the messaging. And it's like the messaging, Star Trek was always a show that promoted social justice, liberal ideas, inclusion. It did in 1966. So the fact that you're trying to tell us that you're going to use Star Trek to preach a message, I'd say, you mean the message it's been preaching since it started? You know, and who are you to say you even have a message to impart to people? Storytelling itself is what should be doing that. But when you come from the position of, nope, we're going to tell all of you idiots what you need to know. We're going to tell you how to think, and we're going to use your favorite medium, your favorite storytelling medium to do it. When I hear that, I'm like, okay, one, you're going to give me a bad story. Because what I want to hear is I want you to tell me that you're going to look to tell the best. I don't care if it's Star Wars, Star Trek, Doctor Who, Game of Thrones, whatever your favorite franchise is. You tell me you're going to look to tell me the best story within that fictional context. But no one's saying that anymore. And it's really weird because I don't believe that I have a message for anybody. I want to tell the best stories I can. I'm trying to find money to make an $8 million movie set in Seattle in 1999. You know, that story doesn't have a message in it. It has interesting characters and they go through interesting things that I think people can take out of that story, what I hope they would take out of it. But I'm not going to tell them what to think. I think whatever work I want to work on should give people something to think about. And that's what great stories do. They don't tell you what to think. A great story inspires you to contemplate what happens in the middle of it. You never should stop thinking about your favorite stories because you'll always turn them over in your mind. And that's what makes them great. I saw Star Wars when I was 10 years old. I'm in my mid-50s now and I still love it.
And great stories inspire other creators.
Yes. And that's all great art. Paintings, music. You know, I just put up another Designing Hollywood with the costume designer and the conceptual artist for Rebel Moon. Whether you like Rebel Moon or not is sort of immaterial because these people tell you about their artistic process and everything they brought to the movie from their perspective, the different races, the different aliens, the different costume design. And it was fascinating to listen to. And they gave it their all. They weren't telling you, well, here's the message I want you to learn from me. I mean, it's just a weird. George the Giant Slayer, my friend George the Giant Slayer, who, by the way, is having his very first live stream this Sunday, which I am fortunate enough to be on. I want to do a show with George called The Lore, where we delve into the lore of all the different great franchises and discuss the meaning of the lore and stuff. George says, Robert will Mrs. I want to make the men uncomfortable. Will Mrs. I want to make men uncomfortable actually direct the new Star Wars, or is she just a middle figurehead to the fans? Story first, politics no. All hail Robert and the panel. I love your show, my friend. Well, thank you, George.
George.
Sorry, I didn't really at first. Will Mrs. That's very funny. Look, I think
necessarily have to do with this film, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think. Look, as I said, I don't have a problem with an activist directing the movie. I am worried about her credibility as a filmmaker on a franchise picture. Here's something that I think people need to understand that I think has been problematic for a lot of these directors, that working with visual effects, and on these movies, visual effects make up so much of the film. it's really hard because now a lot of the visual effects and a lot of the action sequences and a lot of the design work is happening outside of the directors. Like Marvel has their visual development department. They're working on their movies years in advance before a director is even hired. And a lot of these directors have never worked with effects before. And they're expected to, and this is a weird thing, like directors used to have an understanding of things like that. And and people have always said to me, well, Rob, why did James Gunn get hired? What did he do before? And I'm like, well, here's the thing. He came up in the independent film world working at Troma in the 90s. Then he started writing studio pictures like Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead or Scooby-Doo, but when he made movies like Slither, even though it was a $3 million movie, he was very keenly aware of how do you use visual effects and how do you use makeup effects. And he understood the concepts behind it because he'd had years of working in the industry on projects that had those very things in them. Mm-hmm. So just because he hadn't made a $150 million movie, he understood the process from a writing standpoint, from a directing standpoint, and he cut his teeth. He's a novelist, too. He wrote a novel called The Toy Collector. And so when he was tapped by Kevin Feige to make Guardians, he knew how to work within the studio system, and he had a keen understanding of how do you work with effects. I mean, can you imagine if you didn't have that? How would you make a movie with Rocket Raccoon and Groot? Mm-hmm. How would you even be able to make them characters? Mm-hmm. This is not something that you can just do for the first time. You have to have a keen understanding. And when I see a person that they hired to direct this new Star Wars movie, never having done anything remotely similar to that, that's what gives me pause. Because I think the fact you want somebody who has something to say. Now, I don't want to be beaten over the head with a message, but clearly this woman has an interesting perspective, and I think she probably could make a great film. What I worry about, and like Lael, you pointed out, she wasn't speaking from an activist's perspective about Star Wars. She made the point that it is time that a female director directs a Star Wars movie. I mean,
you know what though, bro? I'm look, and I hear a lot of us, talking about directors and stuff like that, and I get that. I'm concerned about the writing. That's. But
have you ever watched Peaky Blinders?
Yeah, I know. And Grant, yeah, and that's the thing, and this is why, again, the writing, that's what's important to me, and it is in the right hands. But then we have to worry about how that writing is translated. But again, right now, bro, when it comes to that subject, I'm like, look, it's going to live and die on the film, live or die on that film. Right. So if all that's being said right now, like everything that's going on right now, if it's a great film, then I can appreciate it. But if it's a bad film, then what we're talking about right now is going to always be at the surface. Literally.
Right.
That's just the way it's going to be, because they're going to hark back to this conversation or what has been exposed. Oh, remember she said this. This is why. Now, the problem is because that surfaced, and even though it had nothing to do with Star Wars at that time, it's still going to be a blanketed curse on the franchise. And on top of that, what always happens is you're going to have a group of people that will probably review bomb this thing before it even gets a chance to live. And this is the place where we live right now, bro. It's unfortunate, but that will happen. Plain and simple.
I totally agree with you. But here's what I would question. Mm-hmm. Star Wars is one of their most important franchises. Mm-hmm. And what I don't understand is we've seen how many directors hired to do these movies. Kevin Feige's Star Wars project isn't really happening. Taika Waititi's Star Wars project probably isn't going to happen. Mm-hmm. We know that Rogue Squadron is not going to happen. Mm-hmm. There has been, and I'm like I said, I'm a huge fan of Kathleen Kennedy's, but even Kathleen Kennedy is not somebody that struck me as she loves Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And what I want to see in Star Wars, I'm going to use an example. Ryan Coogler. Okay. Ryan Coogler had made an independent movie. Fruitvale Station got a lot of credibility. Great movie. Ryan Coogler loved the Rocky franchise. Loved it. And I heard him talking about the fact that he, when I don't know if his mother passed away or not, but his mother had cancer, and Ryan Coogler and his father watched Rocky movies incessantly to make themselves feel better. He loved the franchise. What does he do? Comes up with Creed. That guy, I mean, the balls on him. I love what Ryan Coogler did this. Goes to Sylvester Stallone and Sylvester Stallone pitches him back his own franchise and says, look, man, I have this idea. You're only going to be a supporting player in it. But I have this idea. I want to do a story about Adonis Creed, Apollo Creed's son. He gets Sylvester Stallone to believe in him, and they make Creed. Creed is so good. I mean, I know the critical drinker doesn't share my enthusiasm for Creed, but I love Creed. Creed is so good that Sylvester Stallone gets an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor in his own franchise.
In his own franchise, yeah.
Because you had somebody like Ryan Coogler who cut his teeth. Now, he'd never... Fruitvale Station, he starts on... Michael B. Jordan's in that. Michael B. Jordan's great. That's what I want to see happen to Star Wars. I want to see what Ryan Coogler did with Creed. I want some indie filmmaker to come along who's such a fanatical Star Wars fan, makes it their life ambition to make the greatest Star Wars movie ever made. Now,
do you think the fans would give it a chance, though?
I think
that's the biggest thing.
That's
like,
true.
When we
but
talk about these things, and that's my biggest point, bro. Will people give it a chance? Because the thing is, we can want these things, we can want to see it, and we can want to say that, again, we talk about change and the differences, but the biggest problem is, bro, and it's always going to go back to, will people give it a chance? If it's well written, well directed, if we have the right people in place to do it, are we willing to give it a chance and not sell it short before it even has chance to breathe life?
Here's I have my little rules. Here's another R&B adage. Every franchise is one film away from becoming great again. And the thing is, a great film, everybody recognizes a great movie. Now, some people have different tastes, but for the most part, people recognize greatness. And all you have to do is make a great Star Wars movie, and people will come. They will come. And I'll tell you something. There were episodes of The Mandalorian that I thought were good. I never felt it achieved God status. I mean, somebody posted on Twitter the other day. They asked people moments when directors reached God status. And what they meant by that was what scenes, like show me a scene where a director just created something. Like one of the things that I saw was the shootout on the streets of LA in Michael Mann's Heat. In Heat, that was like a God level status sequence that a director had made. The opening of Saving Private Ryan, the attack on D-Day, was Spielberg working at God level status. And I was thinking that, the lightsaber duel in Empire Strikes Back, Irvin Kershner was kind of that whole duel from the time when you are in the carbon freezing chamber with the lights, the blue and the orange, and you see Vader and Luke silhouetted and their lightsabers ignite. I mean, I get that. That shot, that widescreen tableau, is one of the great moments in motion picture history.
If we look at the again, and those are definitely great moments. If we look at even final scene, the pretty much I would actually say now one of the most iconic scenes now in Rogue One, seeing Vader light his lightsaber in that darkened hallway, which was terrifying.
Right? Yeah.
That was fucking phenomenal.
I loved it, but you know what though? I'll tell you something though.
That was crazy, bro. I'm sorry. That moment was fucking phenomenal, bro. It was. And it was terrifying because, again, it was seeing a Vader that, again, we wanted to see for the longest time, that terrifying factor of a character. And just imagine that you cannot get away from that shit. No matter what you do, you cannot get away from it. That shit was terrifying, but it was amazing to see on camera, bro.
No,
I love that scene.
But I would say this. It was kind of gimmicky because it was not about our main characters. You know, they gave us a scene where they beamed up the signal and they had to get it out. I get it, but it was the most sad to me.
But it tied so well into New Hope, bro.
But that's the example.
You can't take away from that. You cannot take away from that. That was incredible.
I would say it's one of the great fan service moments in the history of cinema. You know, it was because the rest of the movie was a new, satisfying movie on its own. But they dropped in that, and dude, when I was in the theater seeing that movie for the first time, people screaming. I mean, it was in modern. It's funny to me because in modern fantasy filmmaking history, Disney gave us that moment and the on your left moment in Endgame. Mm-hmm. Those are the two moments in that. If somebody said to me, what moments in recent, or if they asked me, you know, Disney sucks, I'd be like, nah. Those two moments, the Vader moment in Rogue One and the On Your Left, which echoed the beginning of Winter Soldier, is one of the great, those two moments, when I went into theater, people went bananas. Like bananas.
That scene, when I was in theaters and that scene, because again, it was the most unexpected scene. We saw it on a Thursday night. No one knew that shit was going to happen. It was a packed theater. And when that moment happened, because again, we knew Vader was in the film. We knew he was in the actual film, but we didn't know that scene was going to happen. Because all we thought was, okay, we would get that scene of him at Mustafar, you know, in his castle, and that was it. We didn't expect to see that particular scene in the very end. And when I saw that shit, bro, when the most gratifying feeling for me was my daughter was sitting right next to me, bro. And she's a Star Wars fan. She's a Vader fan. When that moment happened, she was the one who stood up and applaud. When she stood up and gave it a round of applause, bro, everybody stood up when they saw my daughter do it, bro. And that moment, I was like, yeah, that shit was fucking fire, bro. That shit was incredible. So new age wise, that is a moment. On your left, Endgame, that was a moment. These are moments that are really, really iconic, definitely. Even though you basically, it's bro, if you want to say gimmicky, I get it.
Dude, no, don't take me wrong. Don't take me wrong.
But I get it, but it was still iconic, bro. It was.
It was,
me,
but
it's
sorry.
Not so recent, but I'm going to go with The Matrix and also Inception.
And well, those are, but both of those were original. You know, those are original films. And look, I would say this to you. You're absolutely right. To me, The Matrix was the last movie that floored me completely in the theater because I had no expectations. You know, and The Matrix is an interesting case study because at Warner Brothers at the time, the Wachowskis, I think they had written Assassins with Antonio Banderas, and they'd made Bound, which was a great indie movie. Great. Talk about sex. Boom, chicka, bow, bow. Gina Gershon and Jennifer Tilly. Oh, yeah. Joey Pantoliano. That's a great movie. But they brought in this crazy, they had done all the research, they had all these storyboards, all this artwork, and I think it was Lorenzo de Bonaventura who said, we didn't really get it, but we knew that they did, and it looked exciting enough to roll the dice. And Warner Brothers put up $65 million for that movie, and I remember seeing that film thinking, oh, it's going to be like Johnny Mnemonic, the previous cyberpunk, you know. And I saw that movie on the Warner Brothers lot. I was on the back lot of Warner Brothers at the Steve Ross Theater. And anytime I could go to that theater, Michelle took me to see Dune there. And it was incredible. I don't know where Michelle is. Just a brown girl. Where's Michelle? I miss Michelle. I got to call her. The sound in that theater. Seeing The Matrix, when he takes the red pill, blue pill scene, He takes the red pill. He gets red pilled. He wakes up, and he's a bad. I was just like, I lost my mind. I was following this movie. I'm like, oh my god! Like we're in Philip K. Dick territory. I couldn't believe it. And everybody walked out of that movie. The whole audience of jaded LA people walked out of that movie with their jaws on the floor. It was fucking great.
For me, it was the scene where Neo is on the roof and the helicopter's falling off the side of the building. And it looks like the helicopter is just going to crash and whoever is inside the helicopter is going to be killed. And he takes his hand and wraps it around the cord that's attached to the helicopter.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, oh my God, what is he doing that's going to kill him? And that's when I finally understood what this film was about, was that he had the ability to do things that were extraordinary. And he just pulled, and it was just like, oh my gosh. There were so many moments that blew you away in that film. But for me, that was the scene that I realized this was not an ordinary film.
Yeah, no, it was, and I miss that. I miss seeing, and I'll tell you something. Like, one of the reasons I love, like, For All Mankind as much as I do, the last hour of the second season of that show, when they're over the moon and the Russians, are they gonna shoot the Russian ship down or not, and what goes on in the cockpit of the American shuttle. I mean, and it was all earned. It had led you up to this point. I mean, that was one of the greatest hours of TV I've seen in the 21st century. I loved it so much. And it's because the people that are making the show care. And we still have great stuff being made. House of the Dragon. They knew what they were doing. I can't wait to see season 2. Foundation season 2 is much better than season 1. Blue-Eyed Samurai, which I haven't seen all the way through. Arcane.
Oh, I love Arcane.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff being made, but it's all being made by people that are passionate about what they're making. They're bringing us original visions, and I wish our franchises were handled the same way, because the audiences and the fans will show up. Mm-hmm. You make something good. Terry Metalis' season 3 of Picard. It wasn't for everybody, but it was definitely a return to form for the franchise. Mm-hmm. And as I said, we are one, and if they're really going to make this REY film, I think we should get behind it. Because whether you like this woman or not, and I know all fandom have become pissed off about the fact that this woman's an activist filmmaker, I would say this. She's making films like that because of Pakistan. And I think that you got to give her credit for that. She's putting her money where her mouth is, and she's making things that she's passionate about. And at least she seems like she's passionate about this. But I would also say that as far as Star Wars goes, Disney needs a win. And the fact that it was written by somebody who wrote in Peaky Blinders, that in itself, because I love Peaky Blinders, that in itself is worth holding out hope for. Mm-hmm. And I would say that writer is now, is it going to be great? I don't know. But you know what? And we've been burned so many times. But I think that we're one step away. We're one film away from being in love with Star Wars again. And hey, it can't get any worse than Rise of Skywalker. It can only get better. And if the movie's better than
point. That's my point. It can only, Rise of Skywalker left a bad taste, and I think it was unified. Even amongst the people who love the franchise, are passionate about it. Even people who love the franchise, people who were, really divided. I think everybody was unified when they said, "Oh yeah, this is trash. This attempt, which you've done, it was lazy." I call it lazy writing, and I call it thinking that you know absolutely what the fans wanted, and you fell extremely short. I was one of the ones, like, literally, when J.J. Abrams and the entire cast were at Celebration. I think it was Celebration at that time, and he unveiled, I think it was in Chicago. I think it wasn't in Chicago when they unveiled it. I don't know. I think it might have been wherever it was. But when they showed the trailer And as soon as Ian McDermott and I heard, you know, Palpatine, I was like, wait, is this? I had my reservations about it because I was like, okay, well, how is this really, really going to make sense? And on top of that, you are robbing a great scene from Vader. You're taking away that moment, that sacrifice that Vader gave us. You're taking away that moment in Jedi, and it made absolutely no sense to me. I don't give a fuck. And I said that this was going to happen. And after seeing the film, I was extremely validated, and everybody in the theater felt the same way. It was like, okay, what was this for?
The Force Awakens. The Force Awakens invalidates the entire original trilogy. If you're a kid watching Star Wars and you want to do it in order, you're not going to do the machete order. You're going to get from Return of the Jedi, and you're going to jump to the Force Awakens. Your heroes are made to look like the stupidest people in the galaxy. How could they have won this great victory over the Empire and then let it all go to shit? And the First Order has risen. They've built Starkiller Base. They destroy the Republic in this movie. It's like, it's so bad. It's so lame. I hate it so much. I can't even begin to tell you, because it invalidates what came before. Just like you were saying, the
but
sacrifice.
It's crazy. And if people basically, okay, so where, you know what's strange is when a video game can make so much more sense than a fucking film. The reason why I say that is people who played, if you played Battlefront, or was it Battlefront 2?
2, yeah.
I think. And with the Iden Versio, or Iden, I think her name with the character was Iden, I forget the last, but that story arc made a lot of sense. If you followed it, it made sense. It was if you followed that, it made a little bit of sense.
Franchise video game storytelling is quite satisfying.
It was incredible until you can. It was like, okay, I'm playing this game, and I'm like, yo, it makes so much sense, and it's incredible because it explains a lot. But then you get to the films, and it's like, well, what was this for? Why didn't you introduce this? Because this made sense, and you could have capitalized on this, and they didn't do it. Like, they absolutely dropped the ball on it. So I'm like, I don't know, bro. Again, I'm still going into this with optimism that going forward we can get some good shit. I'm hoping that they've learned their lesson from this bullshit. Same as Marvel, because Marvel stumbled. They stumbled. They definitely stumbled. These last couple of tries, they stumbled. But I will say that there has been hope in the form of Loki, because I love Loki season 2, and there has been hope in the form of even What If. I like this season of What If. So those things give me hope, and I can't wait for on Tuesday to see Echo. I cannot wait to see that.
Okay,
so
I have to tell
I'm
you,
hoping.
Marvel has one movie coming out in 2024. Deadpool 3. Now, I don't mean this as a flex. I don't mean it to tease people. But I've heard some things about with Deadpool and Wolverine, Deadpool 3, that made my jaw hit the floor in a good way. And I was being told these things. I'm like, no fucking way. And they're like, yep. And the person I heard this from didn't know how much of a fan. You know, here's the thing that people don't understand. There's people in Hollywood who aren't like huge fans of something, but they work on things, or they know things, or they don't know how much you want to know, how much you love this stuff. So they're just saying like yeah, this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, wait, what? You know, and I because they don't know I'm the last person they should tell this stuff to anyway, because I'm such a blabbermouth. But I'm not going to blab it out. But
yeah,
all I can say, and I'll put it to you in terms that, but then again, I will say this. I felt this way about Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness as well. I knew some things about it, like, why don't we have Charles Xavier in the floating animated chair? Why didn't Hot Toys make that figure? Like, why didn't Hot Toys make the Illuminati and call it that? Like, I don't know. All I can tell you is if what I heard about Deadpool 3 is true, not only could it inspire Hot Toys to make 50 fucking figures, it's bananas. I mean, it's going to be the kind of thing where there's one thing in particular I heard about, and I'm like, come on. And it's a character. I'm like, this character cannot be in this movie. Are you sure? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, no way. Oh, and
they probably aren't thinking anything of it, but we're like, oh, what the fuck?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. So it, and look, I believe that between Sean Levy, Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman, and everybody at Marvel, it sounds like this. And what's really interesting is I know it's supposed to be bringing Deadpool into the MCU or whatever, but to me it seems like the final Fox X-Men movie, because it's Wolverine and Deadpool. You know, and for me, this is the way I love Star Trek. I love the X-Men in the comics, not the movies as much, but the comics. I mean, I got so much X-Men comic stuff. That I am extremely excited to see Deadpool 3. I mean, my little fanboy G-spot, it's being tickled. It's been tickled. Let me just say, somebody knew how to get in there. 45-degree upturn, tip of the tongue. They knew how to go from 60 beats per minute to 120 and bring me right up there. That's my excitement. They knew what was up, if you know what I'm saying. They used their fingers at the same time, and it was great.
Wow.
Let's hope that the movie delivers. Right now, I'm excited. I haven't come yet, but they know what they're doing.
Wow.
How about that for a late night metaphor? I'm not even drinking on this show except water, and I'm coming up with this stuff. Come on. Watch somebody clip that out and put it up.
Yeah,
but I'm sure somebody will. Did you hear what Rob Burnett said on the show about Deadpool 3? No, but I will say, look. As soon as we saw those set photos of Wolverine in the yellow outfit and the wrecked Fox, 20th Century Fox logo, but it sounds to me, and the thing is, here's you know what. You know why I'm also excited? Whatever I've heard, put that aside. You have filmmakers like Sean Levy and Ryan Reynolds that worked together on the Atom Project. They worked on Free Guy together. They're friends. They know what to do. Ryan Reynolds knows what's up. You have Hugh Jackman coming in. I've actually met him. I interviewed him on the set of X2 all the way back 20 years ago. One of the most charismatic people I've ever met in my life. You have a team of people that know what they want. And they, more importantly, they know what fans want. My only fear about Deadpool 3 is that Ryan Reynolds goes too far into the goofy. I mean, it's funny to say that about a Deadpool film.
That's what I'm afraid of, bro. Honestly, to be completely honest.
Yep.
It's like, I know it's a Deadpool film, but I hope that his character doesn't inspire other characters to go that same route.
Well, because the first Deadpool is, I think, a legitimately great movie. I think it's a great superhero movie. It was low budget comparatively speaking. Like, it cost less than X-Men 1. But it's legitimately a great film because for all the goofiness, it had a great story. Deadpool was great. Vanessa was great. The stories were great. The humor was very funny. The only thing I worry about, Deadpool 3 goes too far into the goofy.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't. I hope. I mean, it's gonna. Again, bro, like, I know I'm worried about that. I mean, I'm worried about that, but I'm also hoping that it's not too overstuffed, like literally stuffed with just characters that you're just throwing in, because then that's when it becomes like fan servicing and a trope. Like, literally just tell a good story. We don't need it to be overly stuffed, but if you're going to stuff it, just make it make sense. And don't just throw these little brief cameos in like you did with Deadpool 2, when all we saw was the X-Men in the room and then you shut the door. You just gave us a little teaser.
But that was awesome. Come on.
It was, bro, and I get the reason why they did it. But if they do the same shit in this film, are you going to think it's awesome? If you see a character that you really wanted to see,
no,
but doesn't get that shine on screen,
no,
you know what I mean?
That's and to be honest, from what I've heard, it could go either way. I don't know.
I just listen. I understand who they're going to give us, or there's rumors. I hope X-23's in it, like they said she will. I hope so.
No one told me anything about that. For real, I don't know.
I know nobody, but that's been a rumor. So
but
I'm hoping,
that would make. But that would
there's
make sense.
one character that I am hoping that is not in this film.
Which character,
bro? Oh my God! I'm gonna say this, and I know people out there gonna hate me when I say it, and I'm fine with that. Because we need to be spicy every now and then. You need to be hated every now and then. I don't want to see Taylor Swift. I don't.
Why?
Come
Is
on.
Deadpool a Taylor Swift fan? Is he?
Well, as Dazzler. You mean as Dazzler? Come on.
Bro.
Come on, that'd be fun though.
Nope. I don't. Just because we saw her at a football game with all of them, bro, I don't want to see it. I don't want
what if she's
to
good?
see it.
Okay, here's the thing. Do
You don't just throw it in there just because. Just don't. That's my thing. Is like, if okay, you know what? It's acceptable if it makes sense. But if you throw it in there and it doesn't make sense, you gonna hear my mouth, bro.
Okay,
I'm telling you right now. I'm telling you.
Here's what I want in this movie, and people are gonna think I'm crazy. You want the hate? I'm gonna go out. So what if in this movie? What if that there's, because you've got Hugh Jackman, who's a Broadway star, total song and dance man, Greatest Showman.
Yes.
Greatest Showman, and you've got Ryan Reynolds, who will do anything. He's fearless. What if in the middle of the movie there's a gigantic, full-blown Hollywood musical number?
I'm out.
Some gigantic. Now wait a minute. Come on. Now I'm telling you, if it's set up, by the way, this is not anything I know either. But if there's a fucking full-blown mutant mayhem musical number,
I'm out.
And you have Dazzler, and the thing is though, wait a minute, it's because if it's done well, a musical, the way they do like a Singing in the Rain, Busby Berkeley,
Oklahoma, where the wind comes.
I mean, what if
the fuck out of this film? I will get up with my popcorn. I'll hand it to my neighbor and be like, "Here, I hope you enjoy this. This is free from me."
But
I'm out.
I'm telling you, if they could figure out a way to do it. And by the way, this has not. I don't know anything about a musical number. I don't know if Taylor Swift's in the movie. No one's told me that.
Way.
But if they could figure out a way to do it well.
Nope. I am not in. I'm telling you right now.
What if
I would check out?
I mean, the most killer, like psycho disco phantasmagoria mutant mayhem. What if they go? Okay, what if they go to the Mojo verse? No, I don't even know if the people who know this one. And you've got Long Shot and Spiral and Mojo himself. By the way, I'd love to see this in the movie. I don't know anything about whether it would be there, but the Mojo verse, they went someplace, or even like the Asgardian Wars, when come on, and Dazzler. What if it's like, it's not Lopty Neck in Jedi, but what if it's like the club in Tron Legacy, or Michael Sheen comes out, or you're in someplace that's cool, and they have to go see Dazzler perform. Come on, there's ways to do it that would be cool. I think you're not open-minded, Lael. Come on,
bro.
Well, we are hitting the 3-hour mark, Robert.
I know it's. Let me just. Okay, we got to end the show. It's been a great show. Let me just. There's a few more super chats. I think we can. A Goth Bob, aka the Richard, says, "Aloha, guys. My lovely co-creator said much of what I preach. The studios listen to what they hear are good ideas, and that's where my own traveling underwater lounge variety show will kick balls. Well, I hope so, the Richard. Let's see it. What's going on? By the way, the Richard's been a member of the channel for 20 months. We do have, by the way, a member call that's going to take place at noon tomorrow. So if you're a member of the channel, welcome to the member call. I will be on the Salty Nerd podcast starting at 10 a.m. tomorrow, and then I will jump onto the member call. Nicomedes Santiago sends in a super chat and says, wasn't the powerful, heroic female portrayal accomplished in my favorite Star Wars film, Rogue One? Or was that just chopped liver?
No,
dude,
that
we
was
all
amazing.
love her. I mean, that was great. Rogue One was great. That's another thing. It's like,
You don't see her, man, but are you serious? Yes, hell yeah.
is that Moon Knight? Is that Moon Knight behind you?
Oh yeah, you didn't see that, bro?
No, dude, look at that.
This display's right there, bro. You got to see this. You haven't seen this wonder
No.
of a display, but you will see it on the collection tour on Monday. But yes, it is. Yes.
I don't even have Moon Knight, and I should. I don't have a Moon
Yeah,
Knight.
it's incredible.
I gotta get
You need to get it. You
it.
definitely.
Goth Bob Rogers, aka the Richard, says, "I want your static sweater." It's blue. It's not black and white. It's blue and white. I got this for Christmas. I love this
Nice.
sweater. Yes, so I got it for Christmas. I love it.
Goes with your silvery hair.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Which I have to get cut.
Don't cut
Mario Lopez, all the way from
You should get a
Portugal.
ponytail.
Hey, Mario.
You need to get a ponytail, Rob.
No, dude, I can't do that. I look like Tim Robbins in High Fidelity. I can't be that guy. Gotta cut my.
Mario.
I gotta cut my shot. Cut my hair short. Mario Lopez, all the way from Portugal, has been a member for 33 months. Mario, say hi to your mom for me. Good to see you. And Mashby says, I just want to first say Happy New Year to you all. Have you watched the second season of What If? I feel they maybe are carrying this into Secret Wars. Well, Mashby,
Yes.
obviously you've heard Lael talk about this. Don't say anything. I got to watch it.
I'm not going to say shit, but when you see the last episode, you will understand, Rob. You'll be like, okay, finally, we're getting continuity.
I can't wait. Okay. The Richard says, what is art? We create so you can feed. The Burnettwork dreams still come true. Well, they do. They've always come true. You dream, or as I like to say from Inception, you have to dream bigger, darling. I love that. Mario Lopez asks, if Aliens was made today by Disney, it would be ruined by a woke agenda and a very progressive marketing campaign. I'll tell you, okay, you know what's really interesting about, I own the very first movie poster for Aliens, and it's a picture of Sigourney Weaver with Newt, and she's holding the flamethrower, and it says, this time it's war. They pulled those from the marketing campaign because Sigourney Weaver didn't like brandishing a weapon. She didn't like that imagery with Newt. So in a way, Aliens did have, people were mindful of marketing and how they were going to market the movie. Sigourney Weaver was, but I mean, I don't think it's going to be interesting because we're going to get the first Fede Alvarez. He has his Alien movie coming out, and I don't know what it's about, but it's going to be interesting to see how they handle that. Remember, I mean, Disney they did a new Hellraiser movie for Hulu, so I think let's hope when they work. And Prey was really good too.
Prey was excellent.
Prey was excellent.
I like that
Hell
Hellraiser
yeah.
film as well. I liked both of them. They were great.
Yeah, they were. So isn't it interesting that they should just allow 20th Century Fox and Steve Asbell, who's the president of 20th Century Fox, is probably, in terms of story and understanding what the audience wants, the smartest executive currently running a studio today, by far, in terms of movie making. Jay Wes says, have you seen season 2 of What If, and what are your thoughts on the season? We've covered that. How many more seasons should they do of What If? What do you think, Lael?
Well, they're doing a season 3. We already know that. I hope it doesn't end at season 3, but I would love for them to do more because I think it's so much to tell, so many different stories to tell, and I think that this last season was amazing.
I agree. Thomas Logan, our friend Thomas Logan's back, says Sean Durkin's The Iron Claw was superb. It's clear to me that Zac Efron, who deserves Oscar love, must play He-Man in the Masters of the Universe reboot. I can't believe how jacked he got for that movie. He's a monster.
He's incredible in this, and his physique and even his face, Robert, the intensity and the stiffness, even you can almost feel the pressure of the being a wrestler, the physical and emotional pressure. And then of course, we know that the characters in this film were also using and around drug use in order to get these physiques. I think that his performance was not only physically impressive, but emotionally impressive as
Mhm.
he kind of traverses this balance between approval for his father and gaining this championship in wrestling, at the same time finding and dealing with these disappointments and tragedies associated with his family, this curse that he believes may be happening. And it's such a beautiful, in my opinion, it was a beautiful recreation of wrestling. I remember the passion and how much excitement there was with Andre the Giant and Roddy Piper and all these fantastic wrestlers. It was so much fun. It was great to see these recreations. But Zach Efron's emotional journey from beginning to end was remarkable. He speaks to his mother in the movie, and he says, "I need help from you." She says, "No, no, no. I don't want to talk. I don't talk to you guys. You guys talk to one another." And by the end of the film, when he has no one to talk to, it's almost heartbreaking. You almost, by the end of the film, as this character has an emotional journey and finally can kind of release and have this emotional release, you yourself find yourself having an emotional release. And I wasn't expecting to see something like that in a film about wrestling, Robert. This is a film that really takes you on this journey and allows you to feel the passion in the sport, but then it also gives you that weight and helping for you to understand, just even looking on the screen, some of these scenes, the way they're shot, Robert, we have characters who are off screen and they're talking, and you focus on another one, and it's just so beautifully done. It lets you in have these incredible insights without being cliche. As I was telling Catherine, we reviewed the film tonight here on the Burnettwork, where they're using steroids, but they didn't do the "I'm going to put gloves on and pull out the vial." It was almost as if you walked into that room, that gym, and you saw someone just the way it would look if you saw someone putting steroids in their body. It was actually quite alarming, and I think that the approach that they did in this film was refreshing and fun. I think the importance of having those specific tropes and also the accomplishments of this family were all achieved in this film. It's a great film. I know some people who are wrestling fans not too happy with some of the recreations, but Robert, I've never seen physiques like this. Zac Efron, people are saying this is one of his best performances ever. I think it probably is, and he not only bested himself physically but also emotionally. It's a fabulous film, The Iron Claw.
Well, that's good to hear. Chad Vance, Syok or Sock says, personally, I love The Last Jedi, but even there, I feel where The First Order seemed way stronger than where The Force Awakens left off, and they clearly had no plan. I think we all agree with that.
I agree.
Totally agree. Retromeister says, here's a quote I came up with a couple of years ago that I believe best sums up what we're dealing with currently. When you replace escapism with realism, it's no longer fantasy. Need I say more? I like that. That's
good point.
I like that a lot.
Good. That is a great point, because the thing is, it's like you're injecting a narrative that doesn't serve the story. You're injecting when you're injecting an agenda that doesn't really serve the story the way it should. Instead of just making everything natural, you're trying to force these things on people. You can't force it. Even if I may support certain things, even myself, I know that you can't force people into it. You just got to let people, you got to gradually grow, let the story serve its purpose, and let people decide whether or not they want to latch on it or not. You can't force it. Don't force feed. You can't force feed a baby who doesn't want to eat anymore. Plain and simple.
It's true. General Grievous says, Rob, it can't get any worse. Disney, you underestimate my power. All joking aside, anytime I think it can't get worse, Disney finds new ways to do it. Well, you know what? They know that the thing is, Disney knows there's a problem. And I think that the reason we're only getting one Marvel movie this year, I think it's great. They went back to the drawing board to retool Captain America Brave New World at considerable expense. I think they know that there's a problem. I'm hoping they'll fix it. Norwegian Kryptonian says, I saw Daphne Keane on Instagram the other day. Put her in a yellow Wolverine costume in Deadpool 3, and she will inspire a whole generation of boys and girls. I don't know anything about her appearing in Deadpool 3, but if she did, I'd love to see X-23, just like Lael was saying. Why not?
Yeah.
By the way, June Wong says an X-Men musical is only possible with Michael Jackson. Well, he's not with us, but Taylor Swift is. And I think Lael, if there's a musical number, and Deadpool 3 is the perfect place to do a giant musical number. I'm Ken, but in the X-Men universe.
Oh no.
Come on.
Oh no, man.
That's not how I want to see the X-Men for the first time on screen.
Hunter Becknell says Happy New Year. But it's not going to be really the X-Men. It's going to be the Fox X-Men amalgamation.
I know, but still, man. But
We've already seen Dazzler.
I know, but into the MCU, bro. Like,
I don't think there'll be no. What if like it's like the end of all that jazz, and the way that Deadpool 3 ends is going to be Deadpool getting into the MCU, but he has to go through this giant musical number to do it. So it's a total phantasmagoria of craziness, and it's like the end of the Fox X-verse, and there's a giant musical number, and Wolverine dances because it's Hugh Jackman.
Don't Thor Love and Thunder me again, please.
No, but what if it's cool? What if it's a great musical number?
I can't.
Hunter Becknell says Happy New Year. RRT and Zed says Hail Bob, Lael, and who has been 100% spot on with her insights this evening. Chuck Norris was in every Star Wars film. He played the Force. And then the last, Take Us Home AM. He says Superman Legacy comes out in 552 days. He's not wrong. I'm looking forward to that. I think James Gunn's going to make a banger. I think he's going to make a movie that rivals Richard Donner's original. I really think that. I really believe that. I think he will. On that note, we're going to end this show now, and I want to thank my compatriots. We're back for 2024. Yeah. Lael, what do you got going on, and where can people find you?
Well, you can find me at the 1/6 Scale Man YouTube channel. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure that you do. Sunday, I think we actually have Collectors Lounge. I'm not really sure, but I think we will have Collectors Lounge International on Sunday. Monday will be the collection tour. So that video is going to be coming out. Also, Comic Book Talk with Friends, Say What Wednesday, and Figure Flex Friday. So there's a lot going on right now. Just kind of getting back in the swing of things with the new year. Couple of videos. I have a video dropping pretty much, I think it's going to be tomorrow. I think it's going to be like tomorrow afternoon. It's tales of the uniquely weird figures some may not want, but are absolutely needed. So we're going to talk about and actually do a video on that. So that's going to be released.
That Dead Strange figure looks amazing.
It is amazing, and that's part of the video as well. So
do you already have that in hand?
No, I don't have it yet. It's on the way. It'll probably be in about 2 weeks, I think. But yeah, definitely, it's a figure that I was like, yeah, it's something that I needed in collection. It's amazing. But yeah, that's going to be going on. Yeah, there's a couple other things, man. But yeah, Happy New Year to everybody, and hopefully 2024 is gracious and kind to us. Please.
I hope so, because it's an election year. It's going to get crazy, y'all.
No, don't remind me.
Joshua Gonzalez he says, here's my Star Wars idea. Make a Munich-like Star Wars film where a group of aliens people have to find the Empire generals and take them out. That could be cool. That'd be more of an Andor kind of vibe. Maybe that's what we're going to do in Andor season 2. Before we let you go, where can people find you?
Well, guys, of course, you can find me right here on the Burnettwork. Also on my channel, Positive Fandom. Robert, we've been reviewing For All Mankind every week, and it's been a stellar show. So, guys, please do check that out here and on my channel, as well as The Pacific. Darth Plato and I have been watching episodes 1 through 10 in anticipation of Masters of the Air, which is going to be coming out in a few weeks. We're going to be covering that.
I can't wait to see that. I hope it's great.
It's going to be amazing. I can't wait for it myself. So I'm excited about that. Guys, you can always check me out on Sunday Brunch, where I do all the parlay in the fandom. And of course, I have a new channel called Roman Empire Matters, guys, where I'm going to be looking at all the different entertainment inspired and about the Roman Empire. So please do check that out as well. And also, I'm going to be reviewing this incredible Boom Studios Expanse comic book. They have a number of different items coming out. I'm going to be reviewing that on the channel here, so you guys can see what it is. I just am so impressed with this artwork. You can see, Dominique Tipper, Wes Chatham, and I hope I'm saying his name right. Stephen Strait, I think is his name. it's just such an incredible series, and they haven't stopped. When it's actually like a thicker paper. To be honest with you, the artwork inside, I'm looking at it. I'm not necessarily that impressed with the way it looks, but it's the story that I'm most concerned with, because this is going to pick up for those Expanse fans
Yeah.
who want to know what happens afterwards. They're covering all the bases with the Expanse, and I wouldn't be surprised in a few years if they picked up after that book, the 30-year gap that they have
Yep.
from one book to another, that we get that series, guys. So just be patient. I'm sure it's coming, because the reception to this particular it was a Kickstarter, and it just exploded. So I know it's gonna come back eventually. So just give it some time, everybody. And of course, yes, Happy New Year to everybody. Tom Jr. Jackson, you are the best. Thank you so much for everything. We are all goof people.
We're all goof people.
What a great midnight musings we had tonight, John.
What a great banger of a way to start the show. The Richard says, "I'll raise you all one." Chuck Norris is the DJ, and I guess this great musical number. Of course, if you're a member of the channel, we have a member chat tomorrow at noon with Roberto Suarez. So come on in, and if you're not a member, you can become a member for 99 cents a month. We have member chats bi-weekly, and we just sit and shoot the shit. And then I'll be on the Salty Nerd podcast at 10 a.m. And then, of course, we have Let's Get Physical Media, the first Let's Get Physical Media, and I'll be doing Robservations. And I'm also on Anthony's channel, Six Scale Mafia, tomorrow at 6 p.m. So look out for that.
And Robert, I think it was in the Ankler, they talked about how YouTube subscriptions are increasing while streaming services subscriptions are decreasing. And I think that's a trend that nobody could have anticipated, but it is something to think about, the difference in the quality of what people are seeing in YouTube versus what they're getting in some of these streaming services. I think it's incomparable.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of, I said it before, the currency of the 21st century is going to be personal authenticity. And people are going to want that with AI and all this stuff drenching our airwaves. People are going to want real human connection. They're not going to want to watch regurgitated AI-generated crap. Not that AI is not going to generate great stuff, but they're going to want to have real connection with real people, as always. And on that note, kids, I want to thank you for being here. I want to let you all go. And by the way, you know what I do? I am proud of this week's Rebel Moon conversation with the costume designer Stephanie Porter. And next week, look for Ella Mirajnik, who not only designed Basic Instinct, but she did the costumes for Oppenheimer. And I talked to her at Universal Studios. It's a great conversation we had. I went to the lot and did it there, so check that out. That is on the John Campea channel. Designing Hollywood's going to be stepping up our game, so cool. And on that note, I will let my friends go. Thank you to Tom Jr. Jackson, the moderating staff. Thanks to everybody who supports the channel generously via super chats and tips and all that. And go subscribe to both of these lovely folks' channels. They've got great content.
All right.
See you next week.
See you later.